This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Jansen. I'm with Rene West as well as Kendall Mahamati today, bringing you the show between 9 and 12. Of course, we're also streaming live on YouTube, so you can watch us on that facility, also on demand a little bit later in the day if you missed us this morning. Now, it's Father's Day weekend. Around the world, here in South Africa, we face unique challenges with regards to fatherhood. So we'll be discussing that on the show today. We'll look at masculinity, the role of the father in the home, and so forth. And we're asking you the question today on Father's Day weekend: what do men want? It's a very difficult question, I think. It's not one that I've ever had to answer, to be honest. So that's where we want you to be with us today. What do men want? On the screen, keep it simple at SABC Newsroom, and we'll put it up on the show as we continue the discussion today. But still lots of news on this Friday. Let's go to Rene for our first news update.
The son of the former SABC anchor and board member, Hope Zinde, is expected back in court for the murder of his mother. President Jacob Zuma urges young people to take advantage of the sacrifices made by the 1976 youth to make education their priority. And the Pan-Africanist Congress insists it will contest the local government elections despite its exclusion from the vote by the IEC. Let's take a look at what's happening in your sports headlines with Kendall Mahamati. A very good morning to you, Kendall, and of course, Evan.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. It's Father's Day very soon. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to lots of new ties and handkerchiefs and that kind of stuff. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
We're starting on a new slate this week. Therefore, I've given the same players, most of them, an opportunity to redeem themselves and make sure that they get it right. I believe in second chances.
Premier coach Alistair Coetzee is set to give his players a chance to redeem themselves, making only 2 injury-forced changes to the starting 15.
Smart save. Northern Ireland get their second goal.
Northern Ireland eliminate Ukraine from the UEFA Euro 2016 Championship with a resounding 2-0 win.
Let the celebrations begin, because they have just given themselves the most amazing opportunity.
And it's D-Day today for Russian athletes as they wait to find out if the IAAF Council will lift the country's ban for state-organized doping. That is what we've got for you in the sports. Be sure to stick around for the entire show. But for now, it's back to the main desk with Rene West for the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. The son of the former SABC anchor and board member, Hope Zinde, will appear in the Brits Regional Court in the Northwest today. 23-year-old Mark Zinde was arrested at the weekend after his mother's body was found in the boot of her car at her Peakenwood estate home in Hartbeespoort. Mark has been charged with the murder and being in possession of drugs. Today's memorial service for Hope Zinde will be at the Hellenic Community Hall, which is at the corner of Linwood and Roper Streets in Hatfield, Pretoria. The service begins at midday and ends at 2 o'clock this afternoon. She'll be laid to rest on Tuesday next week at Pretoria East Cemetery. President Jacob Zuma has made a call to young people to take the lead in building the nation. He's condemned the use of drugs, damage to property, and the violent nature in society when people deal with challenges. The government has also vowed not to rest until the country has achieved the prosperous society. The president was delivering a key message on the commemoration of the 40th National Youth Day.
Arriving at Orlando Stadium to commemorate the day that changed the course of history. History authored by young people. Perhaps an enormous responsibility for these young ones to shoulder. They already face a myriad of challenges, drug abuse and alcohol among them.
The abuse of drugs is threatening to destroy many families and therefore destroy our nation. ake sinciphise bakwethu etshwaleni. Some parents live in fear of their children, who terrorize them and neighbors due to the abuse of nyaupe, hunger, cocaine, heroin, and other drugs. We appeal to our youth to say no to drugs.
The current violent protests where public property is destroyed received attention.
We should remember that not a single school was burned during the June 16, 1976, during the student uprising. Sadly, we have seen horrible incidents in recent times. Students have done the unthinkable and burned university buildings on some campuses and destroyed other facilities and furniture just to communicate that they cannot afford the fees. That conduct is unforgivable and totally unacceptable.
But despite all of this, the president said the struggle was not in vain. Young people who have excelled in their fields were also showcased. From the top charting artists like MT to engineers and CEOs who are making a difference.
We urge learners to emulate them and ensure that we produce more and more skills that are needed by the economy, and to also skills that enrich our culture and heritage.
Those who were young then and the current generation added their voices.
To the youth of our country, we say to you, do not listen to them who, under the cover of darkness, agitate you to ban schools or to ban anything. Do not ban anything. The banning was done for you. The dying was done for you. We are asking you to go to school, educate yourself, and make this country the country that we all yearn for.
We thank you for continuing to remind our country that without the blood that was spilled so we can be free, there would be no democratic South Africa today.
Today may be a commemoration of the heroic events of 1976, but the challenge for 2016 and future generations, a lot more has to be done to build a better country. Mzwane Lembej, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The PAC has confirmed that it is ready to take the Independent Electoral Commission to court. This comes after the IEC announced last weekend that the PAC would be excluded from the vote because it had failed to comply with the electoral body's requirements. The party was requested to present a court order confirming the legitimacy of its current leadership, but missed the deadline. The PAC has also threatened to take the matter to the Constitutional Court if need be.
It's Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. But more and more children are growing up in single-parent homes without fathers. Today, as part of our theme, we put the role of men in society under the spotlight. A recent study by Statistics South Africa shows that most households in the country are run by single mothers. The numbers reveal that 31% of mothers were recorded as being married. This means that it's possible the father might be absent in the household or even the child's life entirely. Gender activists say an increase in the number of absent but living fathers is a grave concern. According to the South African Institute of Race Relations, By 2009, 56% of divorces involving children were published. 48% of these children had absent but living fathers. Research suggests that these numbers continue to increase. In the meanwhile, mothers play crucial roles trying to fill the gap left by passive or absentee fathers. But there's a void that requires fathers, particularly in the life of young boys. How should our society socialize young boys to become responsible men and fathers? Now, to discuss this, we are joined this morning by Professor Malose Langa, who is an associate professor of psychology at Wits University here in Johannesburg. A very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ian.
Is this the greatest concern that we have in South Africa right now? Is that such a large percentage of our fathers are absent?
Yeah, I guess also my starting point is to wish all the fathers happy Father's Day, and they hope they play an important role, especially fathers who are there in their children's lives. And yeah, I mean this issue it's a major social problem, because so many fathers that are absent, and when you talk about absent, we need to unpack it, because absent, it means different things.
Yeah,
I mean they are absent fathers whom the children do not know who they are. They are absent fathers who are there physically but emotionally absent. They are absent fathers through death. So obviously the type of absence, it determines how the boy child may also sort of feel with regards to that.
We see the rise of the ATM father as probably the biggest concern in South Africa. It's the father that simply sends money and has no interaction with the child face to face, that is. How does that affect the child's life, particularly that of a boy?
I mean, obviously, the definition of fatherhood, it has a long history, because more often men tended to define their role as that of providers, as that of breadwinners. So how we conceptualized our role was that if I give my child enough money and I send them to the best school, and it means I'm playing my role as a father.
Yeah.
But obviously the big limitation with that is that many children, especially boy children, including girl children, want an emotional relationship with their fathers. And I think that is the big gap, even for fathers that are present in the children's lives.
That hole, that void that exists in the life of the child, do we see a rise amongst these children, a rise in delinquency, things like drug abuse, even gangsterism, joining gangs, that sort of stuff? Is that what we see when the father is absent?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it has a huge impact. If you were to look at problems associated with young boys in South Africa, ranging from violent crime, substance abuse, rape, and many other social ills.
Yeah.
In many studies which have been conducted, is that many of these young men that are committing some of these social ills or crimes grew up in homes where fathers were at times physically present but emotionally absent, but in other instances where fathers were physically absent. So it does play an important role, because being part of this gangs, it does provide them sort of a pseudo home.
Yeah.
And it gives them a sense of belonging.
How do we re-socialize our children, if one can call it that, especially the boys, to become better fathers themselves, better husbands, better spouses in general?
I mean, the fact that you and I are having this conversation, I see this as the beginning of a bigger sort of movement, because in the last 2 to 3 years, I must acknowledge that the media has been playing a positive role in bringing all these voices to the fore. And of course, out of this conversation, there'll be one or two fathers who are not in their children's lives, and they may be influenced differently. So I'm of the opinion that we need to be having public sort of campaigns to encourage men to play a positive role, even if they are no longer in relationships with the mothers of their children, but they need to be playing that important role.
This programs you're talking about, we see a lot of programs for the girl child. It's time for us to look at the boy child. Do you agree with that?
I fully agree. I mean, I was doing a study some few years ago, and I think at that time there was this big campaign of a network company which had this take a child to work. And in my conversation with young boys, they started raising questions to say, when are we going to have such interventions for boys? And of course also conversations, because girls find it very easy to talk about challenges that they encounter of being teenagers. But I don't think we've created safe spaces for young boys to also talk about their feelings and emotions. We only see young boys as people that cause problems. And we hardly make time to listen to them and hear their voices.
In conclusion, to wrap it all up, the problem we have, yes, we need to deal with the boy child, but how do we discourage this ATM father principle that we see developing?
I think obviously we may also need to, because for me, if we only focus on young boys and not focus on fathers, the two have to be spoken about together. Because we also need to re-socialize men, that we need to be there emotionally. Even if you're not working, you can still be a good father. So we need to debunk this notion that to be a good father, you must have a lot of money. You can be a good father even though you do not have enough money. And many boys, when we talk to them, they say, I just want to have an emotional relationship with my father, and that's it.
That's the most important thing. Professor Malose Langa is an associate professor of psychology at Wits University. Happy Father's Day to all the men out there. It is all of our responsibility to be better fathers, better husbands. Yeah, it's Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to everyone who will be celebrating this weekend with your father, with your children, with your wife, with your family. It's the focus that we also have today is about the role of men in society. A little bit later we'll talk about masculinity, also about sexual health and how that plays out and why men don't talk about these things. But right now, question of the day. It's a wide-ranging question. We'd like you to interact with us. What do men want? We know of what women want because that's always in the media. But what do men want? It's Father's Day weekend. I'd love to hear what you think about that question and what you think about the role of men in society in general. Of course, it's been a very busy week on social media itself. Let's just wrap up the week, take a look back at the top stories that made their way into the charts here in South Africa. Of course, Youth Day. Youth Day was a big one yesterday, but there's also Oscar Pistorius, who very much in the news this week. Those are the two biggest stories this week, followed by Eskom, the Proteas, who pulled off a stunning win a little bit early in the week, and also Penny Sparrow. The lady now claims that she's very poor. Then, in international news, the Orlando shooting. Well, that's well and truly in the lead, and it's followed by the Euro. Now, this relates to the decision by the UK to leave the European Union. It's known as Brexit and not the European Championships. That's also underway right now. Then this hour, the hashtags to look out for at this very hour. Of course, Youth Day is still trending from yesterday. Many people took the time to reflect on the past and encourage the youth of today. It was a wonderful day, celebrated in true style, I thought. Then hashtag Musi is also trending. The DA leader, Musi Maimane, has come under the spotlight and scrutiny after he was quoted as saying, "The education this government provides to millions of black children is no better than the Bantu education of 40 years ago. In fact, many believe it is worse. He was speaking to a gathering at the Hector Peterson Memorial in Orlando West in Soweto to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the June 16, 1976 student uprising yesterday. Here are a few tweets that relates to that. The Minister of Sports is he's the first one to have a go at Musi on Twitter, saying that if Bantu education was so much better, why were the youth of 76 protesting against it? Straight question. Still related to Youth Day. Hashtag apartheid. Yep, there's a lot of banter relating back to apartheid. Some are comparing the now and then as a reflection, while others are talking about the movie hashtag Sarafina. Of course, it was screened last night, and if you watched it, it is a real tearjerker for those that made the experience. But elsewhere in the world, hashtag apartheid is trending for a different reason today. The Latvia regime wants to ban Russian names for babies. Approximately 40% of the Latvian population is ethnically Russian. Very interesting, isn't it? Now, time for us to take a look at the comment of the day. Where's the comment? Is there? Okay, we'll take a look at a picture of the day. Yeah. Okay. No, we don't have any of those. Well, though. Okay. That's the viewer pick of the day. It relates to Youth Day. All wonderful pictures from those days. Let's carry on. Of course, yesterday we asked you a question that related to Youth Day. And we asked a slightly controversial question. As you've heard the banter on social media in the time past, we asked, are the youth of 2016 conscious of the importance of this day? Of course, this day was born out of the Black Consciousness movement, really. Do the youth even know about this? Well, let's take a look at some of the comments that came in for our question yesterday. Bondle Modisele says, we've got to learn to be unafraid, to be the pioneers we already are. Cabello says, Newsroom history is being rewritten and revised to portray non-partisans on 16 June 1976 as heroes. Interesting. Tato says, a lot has changed since the Soweto 76 uprising. We have achieved through education, not all of us, but most of us. And Dr. Moses Belani says, Evan Jansen, what a touching interview with Mr. Flock. Yes, we did an interview with Adrian Flock yesterday. I'm glad he isn't in denial and hope others are learning. And then he gives us a lot of applause there. Thank you, Doc Moses. Now, Lesejo says, I don't think the youth of 2016 understands and appreciates the sacrifices of the youth of 1976. Yes, that is what it is. That was our question yesterday. And that's a sentiment that's shared. But the youth of today have different challenges. It's just the way it is. Our question today is, what do men want? Because it's Father's Day weekend, yeah. But let's take a look at the front pages of newspapers from around the world. Now, we'll start in Washington. The Washington Post reports that an effort to pass new gun control legislation in the wake of a deadly mass shooting in Orlando is poised to end in a familiar impasse in the coming days and potentially pit Republican lawmakers against their presumed presidential nominee, Donald Trump, who called for congressional action on the matter. Then, in India, the Hindu says, Prime Minister Narendra Modi asked senior tax officials to aim for widening the tax net from the present 5.4 crore households to 10 crore households in all non-agricultural income households. Finally, we're in Illinois, where the Chicago Tribune reports that embracing grieving Orlando families and appealing for national action, President Barack Obama claimed a threat to all American security yesterday as a strong reason to tighten U.S. gun law. Very interesting take on the whole matter. Now, let's take a look at what's happening around the country today. We'll start here in the northwest province of the north, of course, where the son of former SABC anchor, board member and colleague and friend to us all, Hope Zinde, is expected to appear in the Brits Regional Court in the Northwest Province. If you don't know, Hope's body was found in the boot of a car at her Peakenwood estate home in Hartbeespoort last week. Son Mark Zinde has been charged with murder and being in possession of drugs. Then in KwaZulu-Natal, where a suspect is expected to appear at the Durban Regional Court on charges of human trafficking, abduction, rape and violating the Immigration Act. The Hawks rescued 3 Swazi children from Jozini in northern KwaZulu-Natal after acting on a tip-off by Interpol. The children aged 5, 7 and 13 were allegedly abducted last year by a 40-year-old Swazi national and brought to South Africa. Now, we'll be sure to keep you updated on those cases as they develop. Now, the Minister of Communications, Faith Mutambi, is handing over a library to the community of Thohoyandou. Let's just go there live to find out what's happening.
Library yoda zvino zviri takadzanga manda ngauri mvelele dzacho dzidotakuwa na izvi zvikoro zvatsini uri na pfunzo ya valuwa hava vanoita abete vatenderwa uda hapa zvino karine vasekete ya luvhuvu ri khou vona haiwa ro bviswa makhabeni
ri kha ḓivha ri manefa vho makhwanya kha vhane vha mbo ḓiphirisa mulaedza ngo ṱavhanyedza kheva ndo livhuwa ndi matsheloni vhathu vhoṱhe ri khou livhuwa sa vharangaphanḓa vha tshitshavha ro swikiselwa heyi library fhano kha community ya Manini particularly block K. Ri khou tenda uri ro wana heyi community library hu ḓo vha na shanduka kuhumbulele ka ikonomi uri vhathu nga heyi library vhathu vha ḓo kona u ḓiitela mishumo hune ra ḓo kona u wana uri u ḓala vhathu vho no khou ṱoḓa u tholiwa u ḓo fhungudzea. Ri ḓo dovha ra tshintsha na political landscape ya ikonomi ya South Africa zwi tshi ya kha uri stock exchange ri kha ḓi vha vhaṱuku nga maanḓa vharema ri kha ḓi vha ro vhofholowa kha zwiṅwe mara hu na hunzhi ri sathu vhofholowaho ri kha ḓi vha na mafhungo a uri miḓini yashu zwiphaza ri khou wana zwi zwa vhathu vha si riṋe ngauri a ri na nḓivho yo ita bisinese zwino zwi khou ri sumba uri ra wana heyi library ri ḓo kona u vhala ra sedza ri tshi yo renga zwipiḓa zwa goloi a riho ri tshi ṱuwa ri tshi ya supermakete a riho ri tshi ya kha mimaini a riho zwino riṋe vharema he ra tou sala hone fhedzi ndi kha u funzea ndi hone hu hoṱhe ho salaho hune muthu a funzea u a ṱuwa a mbo ḓi wana mushumo a pfuma mara muthu o no funzea kha dovhe a vhuye hafha hune kha heyi library ri khou tama hu tshi bvelela vho William Shakespeare vha fhano vho Pythagoras ngoralo tsho fhedzisela input ine nda khou ṱoḓa ita yone ndi ya uri sa SABC ri khou humbela uri vha ite tshanduko ya kunwalele ka matangwa muvhango kha vhathu vho no nga vho KK na vho Ndalamo a ri gudi tshithu a vha na miṱa a vha mali a vha na vhasadzi ri khou sokou vhona vhathu vha si a ri gudi tshithu TV ndo livhuwa. All right, Bosadiki ra khou ngori vhana vha livhuwe hapa ri kha ḓi vha nepa avhana vha livhuwe ri kha ḓi vha nepa
okay
kha ri thome ri imenyana zwiṱuku a ri phumbulenyana ngafho
Yeah, that came to you live from Thohoyandou, handing over of a library there. Now, of course, we're dealing with men, and we ask you the question today on this Father's Day weekend. What do men want? What is it that men want? Now, South African men are sitting on a time bomb, they say. Pharma Dynamics, a pharmaceutical company that deals with men's health, this relates to their poor personal management of chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. As a result, men are suffering in the bedroom. Since June is Men's Health Month, we've invited Dr. Etienne Cook, one of the country's leading urologists, to discuss this from our studios in Pretoria. Very good morning to you, Dr. Cook, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I just want to correct, I'm not a urologist, I'm a sexual health specialist.
I apologize for that, sir. Thank you for correcting us today. Now let's start the interview and talk about what we're here for. Men's health in general in South Africa, what are the statistics showing us? What is wrong, or what are men doing wrong right now?
You see, our problem is that we as men live very dangerously. So we die earlier, and when we die more violent deaths. And it's just because we are notoriously bad at taking responsibility for our health. Our female counterparts, they visit the doctor quite often for very many reasons, but we as men don't do that, and we live dangerously. We abuse alcohol, drugs, we smoke, and we also are very violent if we have to solve disputes, and that leads to also, let's put that, an important factor, the way we drive on our roads, that leads us to die very violent deaths.
Yeah, that's very concerning. Now, reproductive health is very important for men, and I'm sure it's one of those that we don't even look at all. What are we doing wrong with regards to our reproductive health in South Africa?
You know, I think it is important to know that as men we have testicles, and the testicles produce male hormone, which is known as testosterone, but also sperm, which is then responsible for our fertility. Now, the testosterone that's produced by the testicles, it reaches a peak when we are in our late teens and early 20s. But then as we get older, we have a decline in our testosterone level by about 1 to 2% per year. And when we reach about 45, the age of 45, 25% to half of all men have a lower testosterone that has a real effect on our health.
What about testosterone treatments that we see being administered even by doctors now, GPs administer testosterone quite freely? How do you view that? And are there studies in that talk to the long-term use of synthetic testosterone?
Well, I think what is important is there is what we call a syndrome, testosterone deficiency syndrome. And lots of men, when they get older, will suffer from this testosterone deficiency syndrome. And that means they will present with symptoms. And one of the very important symptoms is that they will complain that they have a low sexual drive or libido. The other one is that they might have problems with erections and that they have less sexual fantasies and thoughts. But it's also important that this low testosterone has an effect on our general health. It can have an effect on our weight. It can, if it continues, later cause problems with the lipids, the fat in our body. It can have a problem with our blood pressure. It can also even lead to diabetes and also our bone health. So when men have a low testosterone, they complain about a lot of things, the sexual things that I've already mentioned, but then also that they lose their muscle strength, their zest for life, what we call their oomph. And Bayer, one of our pharmaceutical companies, have launched a whole campaign for this Men's Health Month and week next week, where they say, let's own the oomph, let's bring this back so that we have better health. And important to know that you have a low testosterone is to go visit your doctor. And a blood test will be done. And if that proves to be low and you have lots of these symptoms of testosterone deficiency or low testosterone, then it can be replaced. And that is important to know. It's not an idea to bring the testosterone level to an abnormal high level that we see sometimes in people that abuse testosterone and anabolic steroids when they do bodybuilding. This is just to normalize the testosterone and to get the health going, because we want our men to live healthy.
How does erectile dysfunction and sexual problems and so forth, how do you think it plays out in the wider family, in the group and so forth?
You know, I think our men have an idea that an erection is a sort of a proof of your manhood and your ability to have sex and satisfy your partner is then a sign that you are the man. I think it is important that we know that erections is an important part of our masculinity, of being a male, but that is not the only thing. It is the way we approach our partners. It is that we are in loving relationships with one another. And yes, part of a relationship is that we are also sexually intimate. And yes, for that, we as men need erections. And there's lots of things that is necessary for an erection. Blood flow, nerve conduction, testosterone as a hormone, healthy spongy tissue in the penis. And again, our lifestyle, the way we live, if we live dangerously, if we abuse alcohol, if we smoke, it does a lot of damage to our body. It has an effect on the blood flow in the body, and it can have an effect on erections. So again, men have to look at their health, their blood pressure, their cholesterol. They have to go look at their testosterone levels, make sure that that is not lowered. They have to look at their blood glucose, because a lot of men also suffer from diabetes. And this is why it's so important that we focus on men's health in Men's Health Month, and that we men really take responsibility and go see our doctors, especially if we've lost our oomph.
Dr. Cook, I thank you for joining us today. Dr. Etienne Cook, coming to us live from Pretoria. Happy Father's Day to you, Dr. Cook, and all the best. Now, of course, society has long defined males and females by their physical attributes, thereby creating boxes in which males and females then must fit. Now, traditionally, the male is seen as the provider and holds the power at home, while the woman is supposed to be the submissive nurturer. But with the advent of human rights campaigns pushing for equality, gender roles are being broken down, not only in the workplace, but also at home, in the domestic setting. With more women being more educated, the chances of a man being in a relationship with a partner who earns more than him are significantly higher than ever before. But even now, in 2016, for a lot of men, this is very unfamiliar territory, a reality that sends shivers down their spines. Now, to discuss men's anxieties in these relationships, in these changing times, and also maybe talk a little bit about masculinity and where we are joined this morning by Mbuyiselo Botha, Commissioner at the Gender Commission. A very good morning to you, Mr. Botha. How are you today?
Very well. How are you, Eben? Good.
Very, very good. I'm very happy to be doing this kind of show because, you know, I think sometimes all our social problems start with the father not being at home, or the father not being happy for that matter. It's all changing, isn't it? And we as men have to change.
Absolutely. It's changing. Sometimes it's changed the better, but also, Eben, it's slower, the change. It's something that you can't see, because also the sad part is that in the media, we would always accentuate, focus, emphasize on the negative, when in fact, I can venture to say the majority of men don't abuse, don't rape, but all of these things are not making headlines. I mean, when you care for your children, when you care for your family, when you care for other men, these are things, Eben, would not make news, and for obvious reasons. It's like when a man bites the dog, that makes news, you know. But when the dog bites the man, it's accepted. You know, so it can't make news.
You know, Chris Rock, he says, you're supposed to adult and you're supposed to father.
Yeah, oh, they say that, but you're supposed to buy milk, you're supposed to provide, and when you do these things, why should we? It's like congratulating a fish for swimming. People argue, you know,
Men and women treat money a little bit different. What do you think? What do you think should change, or the benefits of having a female partner that maybe earns more than the man in this, and how should men think about this and overcome this, because this is the 21st century, isn't it?
It is, but also we can't be simplistic about it, because we must go back and say how you and I always emphasize this, that how you and I were raised to look at the structure, the family structure, and we're told that, look, you're the provider, and it is expected of you to bring in more bacon,
yes,
so to speak. And when you are in a situation where you are unemployed, society also puts all of these pressures, and sometimes unfairly, that what kind of a man that you are led by this woman, but also what kind of a man you bring in 30 rent, and she brings in 30,000.
Yes.
And you see, we can't be just dismiss them. We must be realistic and say that you would find yourself, you're under pressure, because then society says, but this is not a real definition, Evan, of what it means to be a real Evan, you know?
Absolutely. How do we change these perceptions, and as men, how do we get around these changes that's happening inside our very own homes now?
I think, Evan, it's important for us to start at an early childhood. I mean, this is that means, you see, as South Africans, we like this instant coffee type of things.
Yeah.
But that means we have to do a lot of deep work. We've got to go down the ground. I mean, imagine at crashes. We've got to go and start there.
Yeah.
And, we raise them understanding what is equality, and understanding how do I respect this woman? How do I respect the young girl as a young boy? But also in the family, we also have to say to men, but. The redefinition of what really makes me a man.
Yeah.
Am I a man because I'm defined by where I stay, how much I have, what I drive, and all of those things that may be important. But we need even to come to a point where we begin to redefine what it means to be a man, because these things ultimately, or at the end of the day, they may not necessarily define who you and I are as men. Yeah.
And it's something that men, we have to do for ourselves. We have to change. Otherwise, we're going to become extinct, I think. But I want to ask you, as the Gender Commission, what are some of the other things that you found the unnerving aspects that come with the changing gender roles at home and in society?
Well, violence. I mean, the 9 provinces where the commission operates. I mean, the issues of violence against women predominant, in all the 9, provinces. And the commission, with the education officers, the legal officers, does a great work in intervention. So we find, I mean, in the provinces where I operate, I mean, Limpopo, you would find that there are issues of estate, issues of witchcraft, all of these things, in fact, they are predicated on men's power. I mean, I like what you said about us talking about masculinities, the different masculinities that we have in our country. So we find as a commission that doing work with our educational officers, research workers, the one thing that comes out time and again is issues of violence.
So it's almost like we suffer from hyper masculinity, which is something that I've discussed in the past with other guests. But I want to talk about the children in conclusion with you today. Tell us, on a positive note, children that grow up in a household where the gender roles are changing organically, what do these children look like, and how do they benefit from this?
Well, if children grow up in an environment where there's non-violence, possibilities are that they will embrace non-violence as a way of life. But also, if they grow in situations where they see visibly, practically, issues of equality, there's a possibility that they would grow up also understanding to respect other human beings, to respect women, to respect men. But also the sad thing is that if they grow in environments where there's constant violence, and I mean, it has these negative adverse effects on them. So it's important that as couples, as partners, how the language we talk, how we treat each other, all of those things. Sometimes they may seem very minute, they may seem very small, but they're important because they're going to be character grounding for kids.
Darkness cannot defeat darkness. Only light can, they say.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in today. Mbuyisele Buerta is a commissioner at the Gender Commission. We talked about, the changing role within society, gender roles, that is. And as men, it's our duty to embrace it. It's our duty to accept equality. We've come a long way. Now, we move on. The son of former SABC anchor, board member, colleague to us all here at the SABC, Hope Zinde, will, of course, appear in the Brits Regional Court in Northwest this morning. There have been lots of messages of condolences, lots of different kinds of tweets and comments of support and so forth. Let's take a look at some of the ones that have come in. This one from Adam Habib. We all know Adam Habib. Shocked by the murder of Hope Zinde, who was engaging us on how to support students in financial need. Our prayers are with her family. Isn't that wonderful? Then Magambu says, when Hope Zinde was appointed board member of the SABC, I was thrilled. I took an active interest in her work there. She was a force. Yes, she was a force, no doubt. Hachelo says, Hope Zinde Memorial, through darkness falls the night, it cannot hide the light. Reverend Dr. Ndiko Siselwa delivered a powerful sermon. Of course, there's another one in Pretoria a little bit later today. Starts at 12 o'clock. Manzini says the following: Hope Zinde rest in eternal peace. Sister, you will remain one of the shining stars from Mamelodi. Now, of course, time for us to repeat our question of the day. It's Father's Day weekend here in South Africa. We want you to tell us the changing roles in society, the pressures that men are under, the absence of fathers in the household. We've spoken about all of that. Now, what do men want? What do we want? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know what I want. I really don't. Anyhow, time for us to go on to Newsroom's Facebook page. Now, the United Nations yesterday paid tribute to the memory of those who fell during the uprising and the progress made by South Africa since its first democratic elections in 1994. Then in the Congo, a former army chief and candidate in Congo Republic's presidential election earlier this year was arrested overnight. His opposition party said that this week. Finally, in the US, the long-running battle over gun control in America reaches a critical stage next week in the US Senate, amid signs Americans are more willing to accept limited restrictions after the deadliest mass shooting in modern US history. Time for us now to take a break. We'll be back with more men's issues right after this.
One other person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Mutsoneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past two registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee, his challenge to keep everyone in the country happy.
Hello again, you're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, South African NGO Fathers reports that children from fatherless homes are more likely to be poor, become involved in drug and alcohol abuse, drop out of school, and suffer from health and emotional problems. Now, according to the organization, boys are more likely to be involved in crime, and girls are more likely to become pregnant as teens. Now, from our Bloemfontein studios, we are joined by author and motivational speaker Charlie Peterson, who grew up without a father. Very good morning to you. Charlie, how are you today?
I'm good yourself, Eben. Thank you.
I'm good, man. Great to be talking to you, man. Just tell us your story quickly. Growing up without a father, it's always very difficult, and there are very many social pitfalls that come with it, isn't there?
Yes, Eben, and I think, but there's hope, you know. I'm listening to a lot of statistics about, you know, how fatherless children end up, but I can say there's hope. Look at us, look at me, look at a lot of other children that grew up without fathers. But it's not an easy road. It's not an easy road, you know. Yeah, but I just want to sum up what is in my book, Growing Up Without a Father, Are We a Fatherless Nation? I'm stating as saying that as we consider today's society, we can undoubtedly notice the social issues that we are faced and that are linked to the absence of fathers in homes. The rate of single parenthood is on the rise. The divorce rate is on the rise. Homosexuality phenomenon is coming, very strong. Gangsterism and youth suicides are increasing in our society. Studies have shown that most people in prison are there because of the lack of fathers' involvement in their lives. Substance abuse, we can see what's happening. Sexual encounters among youth are on the rise, leading to teenage pregnancies. Juvenile and young adult prostitution has become a growing issue in our country, and all is because of fatherlessness, the guidance that, a father needs to give in a house. I grew up even without a father, I actually, when one goes to gatherings, I was always saying that my mother is my father. When you have to introduce your father, you introduce your mother as your mother and father. And that is really not, it costs a lot of scars. There's a lot of children that cannot stand the pressure. Like that, I met my...
Charlie, sorry to interrupt you, but your T-shirt is just jumping right out at me. The question on your T-shirt is the one that I want you to answer for us. It says there, are we a fatherless nation on your T-shirt? I like that because maybe you can tell us how this plays out.
All right, are we a fatherless nation? If one go back even to the Bible, Adam was created first to give guidance and direction, to the world, because our Father who's number one in heaven, that's why the prayer also, that's why, there's a phrase from Tumi Fraser that said, broken people breed broken families, and broken families breed broken communities that breed broken nations. If there's no father figures or father figure in anything, look at the home. If the father is not there to give guidance, as a boy, I was sharing with people, I asked my peer when I started dating, what do I do? What is my first thing now that I need to do? Something that my father was supposed to tell me. And my peer, my friend, just gave me the opposite thing. That will also create some other children, because he will tell you that you kiss and you do this. And also if one look at girls, even that, if a father is not there, that's why I said, what is concerning is that boys become men without the confidence of fatherhood, and girls become women and wives without having the inner security and self-affirmation that their fathers should have taught them. That is why one will see young girls falling in love with older men. They call them now blessers. They are actual fact fathers. They are looking for love and affirmation.
It used to be called the sugar daddy, wasn't it?
Sugar daddy are now they are modernized now. They call them blessers.
I
bless you of this.
I don't like that term at all. But listen, I wanted you to wrap up a little bit on a positive note. Tell us in your own life how you're bringing up your children now, and what should us men be thinking about with regards to our children, because sometimes it's maybe a little bit too late for ourselves, and the hurt and the pain and the loss and all that sort of things you have to come to terms with. So what do you think we should be doing?
All right, it's not too late. You know what I did as a young man growing up? I picked some role models for me. One of my biggest role models is Tate Petrus Mulimela, the previous owner of Bloom Celtics. I'm also the author of his book, I Have Seen It All. So I followed him. He was my shadow father. So my advice to a lot of youngsters growing up without fathers, pick up in the community where you stay a role model, read a lot of books, look at great people that grew up without fathers who have made it in life, make it your mission to look at the positive things. And also for fathers now, because I grew up without a father, I tended to try and spoil my children, which is also wrong, because now things that I couldn't have as a little child, I wanted to spoil my children. And the Bible said, spare the rod and spoil the child. So to fathers now is that, let's get involved with the lives of our children. Let's be there when they have sport activities. Let's help them with their homework. And also in communities, I know, as South Africans, we were raised that your uncle is your father.
Yeah.
Your aunt is your mother. Let's go back to the basics as South Africans and start caring for the orphans, the poor and everyone. Let's embrace them. Let's pick them up. And let's stand up, you know, and say, I'll be your father from now, you know, you who grew up without a father.
Charlie, I love you, man. Happy Father's Day. Have a good weekend.
Love you too, Yemen.
Fantastic. That's what it's about. Charlie is what it's about. We need to be present. We have to do the homework. And our man who's just become a father once again is with us. Kendall Mahamate has become a father. Your baby's a couple of weeks old?
Yeah, he's 23 days old.
23 days old. Now we've just heard about all the social ills that could happen to your children if the father's not there. You still smelling that beautiful baby smell.
Baby smell. You know, it brings me to work because I know what I'm doing it for.
Yeah.
You know, I know what I'm doing it for, and it's a great thing to be present in my children's lives.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's what we like to hear. Of course, we're dealing with Father's Day. Father's Day weekend, we ask you the question, what do men want? But men want to watch rugby. That's what we want, really. We want to watch rugby tomorrow. And let's hope we're going to win, because if we don't win, are we going to see more of this racist vitriol we've seen on social media the last week?
To be honest, it wasn't a surprise that we got that.
Yeah,
it wasn't a surprise. We've been living in South Africa all our lives, so we know that as soon as Alistair Coetzee falters, yes, it's a new era, but he's supposed to win from the onset, and really that's unrealistic. And what we saw on social media over this last week has actually been quite sad.
Yeah, I didn't engage with it at all, to be honest with you, because we can't give that kind of hatred more energy. No. It's got enough support as it will. Let's talk about the rugby, the boys on screen. Yeah. You know, it's a team that's going to need a little bit of time to develop, but the talent is there, and I'm sure that the expectation is tomorrow the guys will put in a more passionate performance, if one can call it that.
Exactly that, because there's been a lot of complaints about, well, from different pundits that the Springboks lack passion now, and they're a little naive in how they play their rugby currently. And you know what? The reality is, Alistair Coetzee and Saru have looked at this 3-test series as a period where they're going to be trying out new combinations.
Well, I told you 2 weeks ago, before the series started, what did I say?
You did say that, you know, you did ask the question, are we willing as South Africans to take 1 or 2 losses to allow this team to start working?
This is the rugby in the modern era is about winning World Cups and winning Tri-Nations. This is a series. Yes, it's nice for Ireland to also win a first time in South Africa. We've won everywhere else in the world. It's just the way it is. I think we need to get over that obsession that we have to kind of win everything. It's a different phase. We're building towards a World Cup in 2019. New Zealand already ahead of us. I think we need to keep it together.
Now, I agree with you 100%. Alistair Coetzee his credentials have been proven. He's not a fly-by-night coach. He's been in the hot seat. He's now in the real hot seat. He was in the pilot seat for a while, and now he's actually the man in charge. And let's give him some support. Tomorrow, Ellis Park, the Boks are looking for redemption, and we hope they win.
We hope they win. We've got to take a break. We'll be back at the top of the hour with the news with Rene Vest. So, see you shortly.
What's wrong with Triple M? What is illegal here? Who is being defrauded here, Trevor?
It is about the best interest of the citizens of this country.
But the citizens are the ones who are playing, who are members or participants in this. If you put in 15,000 rand, after 12 months you get 1.2 million rands. I mean, who wouldn't go for this?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Innovators all over Africa are using technology to solve the continent's problems.
We looked at all the different startup accelerators, and Hack Josie was born.
And governments are finding new ways to improve the lives of citizens.
We anticipate it will be in a position to handle a capacity of 20,000 logs per second.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Pumela Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Hello again. Yeah, you're with us here on Newsroom. Rene West, Kena Makamate, myself, Eben Jensen. We're here to bring you the next hour of news. But before we get to the next hour of news and all the updates that go with it, we ask the question, of course, today, what do men want? It's Father's Day weekend. What do men want? I think it's an even more difficult one than what do women want. Now, these are some of the live tweets that have come in so far. These are the views. These are views of our viewers. Lechasa has a Newsroom, happy Father's Day. As a man, I would say I want a happy family and a brighter future for my family. Lechasa, we all share that with you, my friend. We all share that with you. Then Matlaga Molepo says, Newsroom, men want to be respected. 1994 has put women's rights in the spotlight to an extent men feel marginalized. Maslaha, respect is something that we earn, and you give respect to get respect. That's normally how it works. Anyhow, we're ready now to get, well, our first news update in. Rene standing by to give us the news.
The son of the former SABC anchor and board member, Hope Zinde, is expected back in court for the murder of his mother. President Jacob Zuma urges young people to take advantage of the sacrifices made by the 1976 youth to make education their priority. And the Pan-Africanist Congress insists it will contest the local government elections despite its exclusion from the vote by the IEC. Let's take a look at what's coming up in your sports news with Kendall Makamate.
Thank you very much, Renee. Good morning. It's a very interesting weekend ahead of us. The Springboks, as well as a few other national teams, will be in action. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports.
We're starting on a new slate this week. Therefore, I've given the same players, most of them, an opportunity to redeem themselves and make sure that they get it right. I believe in second chances.
Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee is set to give his players a chance to redeem themselves, making only 2 injury-forced changes to the starting 15.
Smart save. Northern Ireland get their second goal.
Northern Ireland eliminate Ukraine from the UEFA Euro 2016 Championship with a resounding 2-0 win.
Let the celebrations begin because they have just given themselves the most amazing opportunity.
And it's D-Day today for Russian athletes as they wait to find out if the IAAF Council will lift the country's ban for organized doping. All this and more we've got for you in the sports. It's going to be a great Father's Day weekend. But for now, it's back to Rene West, who's got the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. The son of the former SABC anchor and board member, Hope Zinde, will appear in the Brits Regional Court in the Northwest today. 23-year-old Mark Zinde was arrested at the weekend after his mother's body was found in the boot of her car at her Pekinwood estate home in Hartbeespoort. Mark has been charged with the murder and being in possession of drugs. Today's memorial service for Hope Zinde will be at the Hellenic Community Hall, which is at the corner of Linwood and Roper Streets in Hatfield, Pretoria. The service begins at midday and is expected to end around 2 o'clock this afternoon. She will be laid to rest on Tuesday next week at Pretoria East Cemetery. President Jacob Zuma has made a call to young people to take the lead in building the nation. He's condemned the use of drugs, damage to property, and the violent nature in society when people deal with challenges. The government has also vowed not to rest until the country has achieved the prosperous society. The president was delivering a key message on the commemoration of the 40th National Youth Day.
Arriving at Orlando Stadium to commemorate the day that changed the course of history. History authored by young people. Perhaps an enormous responsibility for these young ones to shoulder. They already face a myriad of challenges, drug abuse and alcohol among them.
The abuse of drugs is threatening to destroy many families and therefore destroy our nation. Ake sinciphise bakwethu etshwaleni. Some parents live in fear of their children, who terrorize them and neighbors due to the abuse of nyaupe, hunger, cocaine, heroin, and other drugs. We appeal to our youth to say no to drugs.
The current violent protests where public property is destroyed received attention.
We should remember that not a single school was burned during the June 16, 1976, during the student uprising. Sadly, we have seen horrible incidents in recent times. Students have done the unthinkable and burned university buildings on some campuses and destroyed other facilities and furniture just to communicate that they cannot afford the fees. That conduct is unforgivable and totally unacceptable.
But despite all of this, the president said the struggle was not in vain. Young people who have excelled in their fields were also showcased. From the top charting artists like MT to engineers and CEOs who are making a difference.
We urge learners to emulate them and ensure that we produce more and more skills that are needed by the economy, and to also skills that enrich our culture and heritage.
Those who were young then and the current generation added their voices.
To the youth of our country, we say to you, do not listen to them who, under the cover of darkness, agitate you to ban schools or to ban anything. Do not ban anything. The banning was done for you. The dying was done for you. We are asking you to go to school, educate yourself, and make this country the country that we all yearn for.
We thank you for continuing to remind our country that without the blood that was spilled so we can be free, there would be no democratic South Africa today.
Today may be a commemoration of the heroic events of 1976, but the challenge for 2016 and future generations, a lot more has to be done to build a better country. Mzwane Lembej, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The PAC has confirmed that it is ready to take the Independent Electoral Commission to court. This comes after the IEC announced last weekend that the PAC would be excluded from the vote because it had failed to comply with the electoral body's requirements. The party was requested to present a court order confirming the legitimacy of its current leadership, but missed the deadline. The PAC has also threatened to take the matter to the Constitutional Court if need be. DA leader Musi Maimane laid a wreath at the Hector Peterson Memorial. Maimane arrived at the memorial site and took time to pay homage to the June 16 fallen heroes. He has called on young people to continue to emulate the generation that fought for the rights of students during
Butele says young people should not forget the chapter written by the class of 1976 in the history books, and called on the youth to take an active role in changing their lives.
These events are seared very deep in our hearts, because if we talk about our freedom, if we talk about the heroes of our freedom, if we talk about the sacrifices that were made, we know that the heroes and heroines who actually contributed a big chunk to our liberation struggle are people like Hector Peterson here and many others.
UDM leader also took time to pay tribute to the youth of 1976. He was on a campaign trail in the Eastern Cape.
We must also remember that today is an important day in our calendar. When we commemorate the youth of yesteryear who demanded change in this country, we all agree that many good things have happened since those dark days.
The APC was in Langa, in the Western Cape. The party says the youth must defend the gains of democracy, especially the right to vote, as the country prepares for the local government elections.
We therefore want to call on everybody who is honest, everybody who is concerned, to exert ourselves positively in the interest of the future of our children, that is the youth.
One Azania, one nation.
The Azanian People's Organization, AZAPO, visited Avalon Cemetery in Soweto. This is where many young people who were killed during the June 16 uprisings are buried. Among them, Hector Peterson and Tsietsi Mashinini.
There were young people whose lives were sacrificed for the struggle. And those young people must never be forgotten, ever.
For these liberation heroes, the fight to abolish Bantu education may be over, but their selfless sacrifices to the democracy for the country will never be forgotten. SABC News.
3 days after the Soweto uprising in 1976, the UN Security Council expressed its deep shock over the large-scale killings and wounding of Africans in the country. The United Nations paid tribute to those who fell during the uprising and the progress made by South Africa since its first democratic elections in 1994.
Resolution 392 of 1976 passed in record time just 3 days after the massacre and after letters of complaint were brought by 3 African countries, Benin, Libya and Tanzania, that expressed concern over the repressive measures and wanton killings perpetrated by the apartheid regime. The resolution strongly condemned the South African government. It expressed profound sympathy to the victims of the violence. It reaffirmed that the policy of apartheid was a crime against the conscience and dignity of mankind. It recognized the legitimacy of the struggle to eliminate racial discrimination and called on the South African government to urgently eliminate apartheid.
We all join the people of South Africa in commemorating the anniversary of the Soweto uprising. Those days of June of 1976, it once demonstrated the perversity of the apartheid system, as well as the unstoppable march of the people of South Africa towards freedom. I think, all of us who look back at those images from 1976 cannot still help be moved as we saw those who were cut down by the forces of the apartheid regime and whose only crime was to demand the dignity and the respect that was their birthright.
The racist regime at the UN was spearheaded by this man from 1962 to 1984.
In terms of preparing this strategy and trying to prepare the documents, resolutions, that type of thing, and the procedures and so on, well, I think I was crucial. But I could do nothing because I was only a member of the Secretariat. Without the Special Committee on Apartheid taking over, I would make suggestions to them. They take over. They go to the General Assembly and get action. They go to the Security Council and get action, or go to the public and get action.
Would feature in at least 4 resolutions of the Security Council in 1976, first condemning the country's aggression against Angola, then its condemnation of the June 16th slaughter in Soweto. In a separate resolution that year, it also condemned numerous hostile and unprovoked acts by South Africa, violating the sovereignty of Zambia. And then finally in 1976, it condemned actions by the then regime for closing certain border posts with Lesotho, intended to coerce the Basotho Kingdom into recognizing the Bantustan of Transkei. So quite a walk down memory lane, and that was just 1976. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.
In international news, campaigning ahead of Thursday's referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union has been stopped following the killing of a pro-EU member of Parliament. 41-year-old Labour MP Joe Cox was shot dead by an attacker at Birstall Village in northern England. A 52-year-old man was arrested. He was named by British media as local man Tommy May. He's reported to have been a loner with mental health issues. The attack halted a frantic day of campaigning, as two new opinion polls indicated that more British now want to leave the EU than want to stay. If they prove correct, Britain would become the first state in the nearly six-decade history of the bloc to leave. That's your top news for now, but stay tuned. We'll be back after this short break.
Celebrating this Junjunjis thing like a festival.
What has happened to us? I'm an African man. I don't celebrate death. June 16 was a day in which people died. We were sinking deeper and deeper in a quagmire of hardship.
What we must do, we must learn. It's so emotional. We should change this thing. Education is an important thing that is a master key, can open any locked doors.
June 16 should be a day in which not only young people, but South Africa should sort of take a reflection and say, where do we come from? Where are we? Where are we getting to?
Hello again, time for the serious business here on Newsroom. Now this week the release of two statistics of relevance to South Africa's economic and business outlook, with a balance of payments figures for the first quarter of 2016 and the annual retail sales growth for April 2016. In the case of the balance payments, that is, South Africa's ability to basically pay its way in the world, the current deficit account widened, primarily because South Africa paid more dividends to foreigners than it received from its investments abroad. And the retail sales were down in April, reflecting the still sluggish economy. But the big issue of the week, both for the global economy and South Africa, is the Brexit referendum in the UK next Wednesday. The campaign around the crucial decision as to whether the United Kingdom will remain in the EU or not is now in its final stretch, and globally all eyes, as well as those of the financial markets, will be in the outcome of next week's UK opinion polls. Well, they've swung backward and forward, but seem to suggest that the result will be very, very close. Now, as always, on a Friday, Professor Raymond Parsons is with us. Very good morning to you, Professor. Nice to have you with us again.
Good morning, Evan.
Before we talk about Brexit, let's talk about the latest balance of payments figures for the first quarter of 2016.
Well, look, I think you quite rightly said they are volatile. We mustn't read too much into one quarter's figures of the balance of payments. But there are one or two underlying messages that we should take note of. That is quite clear from the numbers that, for example, although we've had a weaker rand, our exports have not responded as they should, as one would expect. If you followed a sort of textbook theory about what a weaker rand should be able to do for your exports. I think it's also clear that we are investing much more abroad than we are attracting foreign investment. And all this, of course, one can say does bear on what the credit rating agencies have been saying, the various boxes they've ticked. So, I mean, all the balance of payments is doing is simply, in a way, reflecting some of those concerns, and we will have to address those concerns in the months ahead.
The April retail figures on the back of this? Good or bad news? How do you view it?
Well, I think they're not unexpected. We have a sluggish economy, and what the retail sales are saying is, look, that out there the consumer is not spending, is not able to spend as he or she has been able to do before. And we know what the reasons are. It's partly inflation.
Yeah.
It's partly that many consumers are heavily in debt and do not wish to incur any more debt, especially with the rising interest rates. And then finally, of course, unemployment is also an impact on consumer spending and on retail sales. So I think it's consistent with our current reading of the South African economy.
Yeah, there's a little bit less to spend, and we all need to live with a little bit less. Isn't that so, Professor?
We have to do more with less.
There we go. I like that. But now the big overarching issue, I think everyone with a little bit of money invested anywhere in the world is having a look at Brexit right now. What is your expectation for next week? It seems as if it's going to be very close.
Well, it looks like it's going to be very close. The arguments have gone, forward and backward, and the opinion polls have gone also backwards and forwards, as you have indicated. I think the point of departure must be, of course, at the end of the day, it is for the British voter to take their decision. But quite clearly there are much wider effects, because Britain is the 5th largest economy in the world, and if it chooses to opt out of the common market, that will have important consequences for the British economy itself, and also for the common market, and also for South Africa, because we have an important stake both in the British economy and in the common market. So whatever decision is taken next week will have wide effects on the global economy, and quite clearly the message broadly from the global economy is, we hope you will stay in the family of the common market and not have a messy divorce.
Well, it seems as if Boris and his followers have something totally different lined up for us. But I want to narrow it down and bring it back to South Africa. I'm sure that our governor, we see on screen there, must be a little bit concerned with what could happen with the South African economy if Brexit went ahead.
I think the big point is that because this is a very unusual development, it does generate a huge amount of uncertainty for countries like South Africa. We're into uncharted waters. Now, if the decision next week is that Britain wants to leave the EU, it has a 2-year period designated in terms of the EU treaty where it has to negotiate its exit. And it must do it within 2 years. There are certain penalties that also incur if you don't. That gives South Africa an opportunity, and other countries, but we're talking about South Africa. We then have to draw up some contingency plans. We've got to say, well, what has to be renegotiated with the EU or with Britain from a trade point of view, from the point of view of our interests? How are our economic interests affected by this very dramatic development in Britain and in the EU? And we've done some research at Northwest, which we have released today, just to say to South Africans, look, I know we've been preoccupied with a lot of other important domestic things, but we better keep an eye on what happens next week, because if the outcome is negative, it could, in a worst-case scenario, shave almost 0.1% off our own growth rate. That has certain implications, especially if this year we're only expecting a growth rate of almost 0, and perhaps next year, or perhaps 1.3. So for us, it's very important that we assess what the decision is next week, and certainly from South Africa's point of view, we would prefer Britain to stay in the common market rather than to exit it.
I want you to look at to tell us what you're seeing, the arguments for and against it. It seems as if the arguments for an exit has gained a little bit of momentum in the last couple of weeks and months.
Well, speaking as an economist, I would certainly say I think that the economic arguments are much stronger on the side of those who want to remain than those who want to exit. But I don't think that is really where you will find the swing factors. I think the swing factors for the exit constituency really revolve around the sovereignty arguments, the political arguments. Does Brussels, which is the headquarters of the common market, have too much power, too much say over other economies? And secondly, the migration issue. I think these are the two important issues. These are the two swing factors.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the British Prime Minister has sought to negotiate certain special relationships for Britain in respect of those issues. So the package he's putting it's an amended package for their future membership of the EEC. But whether it will prevail, well, we'll see next week what the British electorate decide their economic future ought to be.
This is such a massive, massive risk, and something that 10 years ago one would never have even contemplated. How did the UK get to this point, you think?
Well, I think you must recall that in 1975, when they joined the common market, they also had a referendum, and they got a 2/3 majority. But there's always been a residual unhappiness among many of the British nation about being part of the common market. And I think some of the decisions since then have led to a lot of criticism. I'm also coming back to the issue of sovereignty and the issue of the more recent issue of this migration problem, which I don't think has been well handled by the EC. In fact, that the anthem for the common market is Ode to Joy. And I think many people would say, well, it's not an ode to joy, there are problems. And I think it's the problems that have emerged since 1975 which have really triggered off this big debate. Does Britain still want to be part of the common market future or not? And the important point on the table now is whether the concessions which the current British government has negotiated to amend its position in the common market, will that be enough to assuage the electorate that these problem areas about sovereignty and about migration can still be dealt with within the framework of the common market. So the real question for the British electorate is, if you don't like some of the rules of the club, do you leave it or do you stay in and try and make those rules better? And I think that is really the big question that they face next week.
Sounds a little bit like a marriage that's gone sour, Professor. But I wanted to ask you about your final thoughts for this week.
Well, I think we must just keep a very careful eye on what happens in the United Kingdom next week. I think it's important for us, if they decide to leave, we will have to do our homework to see if we can soften the impact and manage the uncertainty over the next year or two that will arise. So all I can say to your viewers is watch the space.
It's going to be a very interesting week. Professor, thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts on, the economy, really, this week. And it's something that we've got to keep an eye on, says Professor. Thank you for joining us, as always, Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University. Time for us to take a break. Don't forget, of course, we're dealing with issues of Father's Day this weekend. Happy Father's Day, we should say in advance. But we ask you the question today, what do men want? Men want to watch rugby, some people tell me. It's not really as simple as that. After a short break.
There are no permanent enemies or friends in politics.
I agree with Professor Sietwe fully.
Do people still preserve the meaning?
They have no clue what it meant to be black under apartheid.
Acting Police Commissioner Phahlane dropped a bombshell in Parliament this week when he suggested there could be a possible cover-up. What do you think of this story? What kind of problems were those, Vuyo, if I can just get in there quickly?
Every corner or sphere of our lives has become a site of struggle.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel. It's
Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day if you've just joined us as we look forward to Sunday. Let's hope that it's a peaceful and, family-orientated weekend. But a report on a study by the Centre for Social Development at the University of Johannesburg, as well as the Sonke Gender Justice Group, has found that many absentee fathers see themselves merely as financial providers for their children, often depriving them of emotional care and support. Sonke Gender Justice set out to speak to fathers who are not living with their children, have little contact with them, or seldom provide them with money. The research sought to contribute to a broader understanding of the impact of absentee fathers. Psychologists, they say most children who are sexually aggressive against other children come from homes in which there was paternal absence. And often these children blame themselves for the absence of their father, often leading to a lack of self-esteem or even low self-esteem. So, how important is the role of active fathering as opposed to being an emotionally passive ATM father? Well, to answer this question is the founder and the CEO of Cool Dads Foundation, Bongani Luvalo. Very good morning to you, Bongani. I'm very happy to be talking to you today.
Good morning indeed. It is a good morning, and I'm quite glad for the invitation.
We live in the time of blessings and ATM fathers. What is an ATM father?
Basically, an ATM father would be a dad or a father, in this case, who does not avail himself physically and emotionally, but allows the wallet or the bank card to actually do the fathering responsibilities towards their children. And I think society has, embraced or has actually given space for such. A man is defined by what they're able to provide. Yeah. And continuously as fathers grow or men grow, it is passed from one generation to another, where you are taught that your responsibility in your household or in your family is to provide financially. If you can't provide financially, you're not man enough, and that means you're not a father to your kids. So it has become a norm where we see fathers actually wanting to spend more time in making the money than actually being there physically and emotionally to connect with their kids.
This leads to a lot of social ills that we see play out in our townships, on our streets, in our cities, in our towns. These ills are well documented: drug abuse, gangsterism, all these kinds of things. How do we change this?
First and foremost, society has got to acknowledge that men or fathers have got a bigger responsibility than just to provide financial means. One, we've got to stop this tendency of saying that a boy or a man doesn't cry, because of once you remove that ability of one expressing themselves emotionally, then they won't be able to avail themselves emotionally, because of they are always going to detach themselves. Yeah. If they're hurting, they can't express it. If they're happy, they can't express it. They find alternative ways of having to express that. That's why men would be found in most cases in shebeens, in pubs, in soccer matches and so on, because of that's where they can allow their feelings to actually, let them out. So we've got to let a boy child to actually, voice out when they're hurt, when they're in pain, when they don't like anything. And also we've got to take time and listen to a father, when you say you don't want this and you don't want that for your child, or actually how you're being treated in the house, in most cases you are told to take a back seat and allow women to actually be in the forefront. So society has got to acknowledge that a basic responsibility of a man is not just financial provision, but they are human beings who've got emotions, who've got, to be given affection, So once we then move away from that of thinking that men can't express their emotions, then we're going to build a better society.
Tell me about Cool Dads. I like what you guys are dads with a passion for fatherhood, but tell me, what do you do with this foundation?
Okay, Cool Dads Foundation has got 5 programmatic areas. One, we've got interactions. Many guys don't know what to do with their kids. If they spend time with their kids, basically they'll just chill. but we are teaching them how to interact on different activities with their kids. We do picnics, we do date outs, anything that is going to foster relations between a father and a child. The second part is empowerment of a father, where we do seminars and workshops on different thematic issues. It could be a question of human trafficking, gadgets, and so on, financial liberation, having to plan well in time for your kids. That's what we do with the empowerment program. Thirdly, we've got what we call a Big Brother mentorship, which we just launched about 3 weeks ago, where we're taking 70 boys that we have identified from the Far East, which is Ekurhuleni, where we're going to mentor them on a 3-year program. That's where the question of having to allow a boy child to express themselves. Many of them, when we spoke to them, they say they don't have that room where they can actually express themselves and give an understanding of how they feel, how their households are set up, and how that affects them psychologically. So we are going to be mentoring those boys in the next 3 years on career pathing, on life skills, exposing them to different aspects of life, going to camps, going to movies, and so on. Some of us have only eaten pizza, in our first year. And what does that mean to a boy child, And the fourth program, which we have not really tapped into, is what we would call toy bank and clothing bank. We know the levels of unemployment in South Africa, and as we spoke earlier on about the man being a provider, as and when you can't provide for your family, it then becomes a disadvantage to you. So we want other fathers who've got enough to share with others to actually give that opportunity to. And the fifth one would be looking into advocacy and lobbying.
In conclusion, though, the scary statistic are the ones that came out of the UKZN research module that they've done and said almost two-thirds of black households in South Africa, the fathers are absent, and that number's not coming down. How are we going to win this? How are we going to win this fight?
I think first of all, we've got to bridge the gap. My biological father never played any role in my life, and having to bridge that gap between myself and him is going to be quite a tedious exercise. But we've got to start nurturing the boy child. How do we inculcate a culture of family values in the boy child today? So that tomorrow when they become men and they become adults, how do they interact with females? How do they build sound family households? So we've got to start bridging the gap with the boy child that is currently existing. Because we have got a better chance of actually teaching those systems and those values. Unlike having to try and teach you those systems and values right now, we've got years and years where we have seen how men behave in society. And it could be a little bit of another tedious exercise to actually remove you from that space. But I believe that we've got to invest a lot in a boy child so that we ensure that we've got better men tomorrow who are going to assist in building a good society.
Bongani, happy Father's Day this weekend. I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. You're doing fantastic work. This is what our country needs.
Thank you very much. And hopefully no mothers would be saying Happy Father's Day to other mothers who are actually playing a double role.
No, that would be tough. Now, of course, that's the founder and the CEO of the Cool Dads Foundation. His name is Bongani Luvalo. Wonderful work that they do. Now, of course, it's time for us to take a quick look around the newspapers on the African continent, in the countries in and around here. We'll start in Lesotho. Of course, we're all around Lesotho. The Times there reports that the Southern African Development Community has called a special summit to discuss Lesotho's political and security situation, with particular focus on the government's progress in implementing recommendations made by the Regional Bodies Commission of Inquiry. This was led by Judge Mpapi Pumapi. Then, in Tanzania, Tanzania says the government of Tanzania and Sweden signed a partnership agreement 4 years. That's from 2016 until 2019. It will strengthen the country's economy and the people's development in various fields that include education, research, renewable energy, as well as the fight against poverty. Then we go to the Namibian in Namibia. Reports there that more than 100,000 children do not attend school in the country, despite free primary as well as secondary education. That's incredible. It's Father's Day. We're dealing with father's issues. We ask you the question today: what do men want? It's a very difficult question that I don't have an answer to. Some men say respect. That's some of the tweets that we've been coming in. We'll take a look at it later. But first, other tweets say men want to watch rugby. So let's go to the sport with Kendall Mahamati.
Evan, thank you very much, and a hearty good morning to everybody. Yes, it is a massive sporting weekend, and as fathers, we all are looking to some great sports, starting with the Springboks, where the coach, Alistair Coetzee, has offered the vast majority of the starting 15 against Ireland in Cape Town last weekend a chance to redeem themselves in Joburg on Saturday. The newly appointed coach made 2 injury-forced changes to the starting lineup. Lions playmaker Elton Jantjies comes in for Pat Lambie, while Louis de Jager is replaced by Peter Steph du Toit. Both Jantjies and du Toit played off the bench in last weekend's 26-20 defeat to Ireland.
It will be the Springboks' second test in 7 months, and they should look better than last week. Although there will be huge pressure to produce a result, they tend not to lose back-to-back too often. History has also shown that the Boks bounce back from defeat effectively.
I would like us to focus on our small little objectives, making sure that our basics, our set piece stay the same, working hard in the kick chase, working hard back, and not them out sprinting us to get to a ball, because those are little things that show, a team who wants it more. And by executing the basics right, I'm positive that we can get the victory this weekend.
After last weekend's match at Newlands, there are areas that need attention. It will be senseless if the Boks are guilty of the same mistakes. This will also include ensuring that there is discipline on the field. The Boks conceded 7 penalties in the first 20 minutes last week. Unforced errors will have huge consequences.
Players, financially, it will hurt them financially, or it could cost his position in the team as well. So we're starting on a new slate this week. Therefore, I've given the same players, most of them, an opportunity to redeem themselves and make sure that they get it right. I believe in second chances.
Playing at the Emirates Stadium should give the Boks the impetus to overturn the defeat in the mother city. It's the home of the Lions team that has produced good rugby this season and who topped the South African Conference. It will also be encouraging to see Jantjies get his first start alongside his Lions halfback partner, Faf de Klerk.
It's always special playing at Ellis Park, and then some of the boys are home games for the home field and stuff. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to Saturday. We definitely want to rectify and improve on last week's performance. So there's no need to speak about motivation. You're going to have to, you're really motivated. I think that started on Sunday after the game. The boys were really hurting, and we're really looking forward to rectifying that and making sure that we all won on the same page on Saturday and making sure that we execute our plan, and we'll definitely get the victory.
Lions wing Ruan Combrick and lock Franco Mostert could make their test debuts after being included on the South African bench. Both have been in excellent form in Super Rugby. Lebogang Dube, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, now Northern Ireland will face world champions Germany in their last Group C match on Tuesday with their tails in the air. This after Michael O'Neill led the Irish to their first ever European Championship win, eliminating Ukraine in the process with a 2-0 victory last night.
Something remarkable happened here.
45 minutes. In by Norwood, McCauley's there, and Northern Ireland are in front.
Then there was fuss when the Czech referee Pavel Kralovic ordered the teams off amid a second-half hailstorm. But once the skies had cleared, the match resumed. The pressure was mounting on Ukraine, and it evaporated in stoppage time when Northern Ireland doubled their lead, sparking euphoric scenes among the green on the stands. Poland held Germany to the first 0-0 draw of the tournament as the world champions struggled to break down their neighbours, who will be satisfied with a point. The result means both sides, who won their first opening matches, only needed points in their final Group C matches against Ukraine and Northern Ireland respectively on Tuesday to guarantee reaching the last 16. Meanwhile, after beating Belgium 2-0 in their opening Group E match, Italy will fancy their chances against Sweden this afternoon. But they should be wary of star striker and captain Zlatan Ibrahimovic, even though Sweden opened their 2016 campaign with a 1-1 draw with the Republic of Ireland on Monday. And the Czech Republic are going into their clash against Croatia, seeking to redeem themselves after conceding a late goal against Spain on Monday. Croatia, on the other hand, will be determined to seal a last 16 berth with another win in the Group D face-off, and the match will kick off at 6 p.m. Also in Group D, Turkey have an uphill battle to qualify for the last 16 as they take on the reigning champions, Spain, at 9 p.m. Turkey are playing in their first major tournament since they reached the semi-finals at Euro 2008 by beating Croatia on penalties in their last 8. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now staying with footballing news, Mamelodi Sundowns will begin their CAF Champions League quarter-final match against Il Satif of Algeria tomorrow. Sundowns were thrown a lifeline when Asvita Club were thrown out of the competition for fielding an ineligible player. But how far can Mamelodi Sundowns go in the competition? To find out, I'm joined this morning by Tieni Wakamabasa, a senior sports writer from Times Media. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming through to Newsroom.
Yeah, morning, man, and happy Father's Day to all the real fathers out there.
No, the real fathers. Thank you for actually making that distinction. It's all about the real fathers, because there's some people who are not being fathers, but let's not get into that. Yeah. Let's talk about football, and that's the reason we got you out of whatever you were doing to come and join us. Thank you for that. We're talking about Mamelodi Sundowns and their chances in the CAF Champions League. It's a massive ask of Pitso Mosimane and his men to go and perform where others have failed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they're in the same group as past winners. You know, when I say past winners, you know, if you look at the team they're playing now, ESATIF, they won the Champions League in 2014. Zamalek have done it before. The Nigerian side, Enyimba, have done it before as well. You know, so obviously, you know, it's easier said than done when you say, you know what, they can go on to win it, but they have the quality to compete. I just feel that, you know, the South African teams sometimes have a problem in a sense that the little things that they're supposed to get past, you know, they're not able to do that. Like refereeing, for example. Sometimes they get too frustrated, fight with the referees, you know, and then you lose focus, and then you lose the matches, and then you're out. It's as simple as that. You know, so in terms of the quality at the disposal, no doubt about it, they can compete Sundowns.
So it's really about the mental aspect and the psychological aspects, the things that are behind what happens just when you're on the training field. How strong mentally do you think they are? Because I'll tell you why I asked this, Diane, because just recently it's been said by some commentators that Bafana, for example, are not strong enough to make it on the continent against continental opposition. How strong do you think these guys need to be?
Yeah, let me put it this way. You know, they won the PSL title under so much pressure, you know. And I know people say it was easy, but it was not easy. You know, there was bit versus there fighting, you know, until the end. And, you know, they do have the players who can handle that pressure, and they're mentally strong. Like, for example, Hlompo Kekana. You know, he plays for Bafana as well. He's a strong guy. He can compete against anyone. You know, then you have the likes of, you know, the experience, you know, of Teko Modise. Yeah, of course he's not playing regular football anymore, but he's got that experience. He's got 66 Bafana caps. He knows what Africa is all about, you know. So in terms of that, yes, they do have the players who can handle it mentally. You know, but like I said, you know, sometimes you just have to focus on your game, like they did when they played AS Vita in DRC. And for me, the way they handled it, you know, yes, they didn't take the chances, and it came back to haunt them in Pretoria. But the way they handled the match, you know, it was well. You know, if they do that again, you know, I see them, you know, going all the way. I have no doubt about that.
In fact, I think before we go too far down the road, let's talk a little bit about the players that are available to Pitso Mosimane. I had a quick check before I touched base with you. It seems like, firstly, Onyango, his first choice goalkeeper, is not going to be available. Alangaman is not going to be available. The yellow cards that he's received, and Kekana and Modise are doubtful starters, because I think Modise has got a bout of flu. Kekana talk of a groin injury. These are really two of the key players, let's say, of the key players that he would have been relying on. Does he have enough depth in terms of mental aptitude and strength in his squad to actually beat ESATIF in Algeria?
Yeah, no, definitely, yes. You know, the whole thing is a big loss, you know, if you mention those players. You know, but the thing with Sundowns, they're not like your Kaizer Chiefs. They do have the depth. Chiefs don't have the depth. They're not like your Bidvest Vets, you know. Vets don't have the depth, you know. But you talk about Sundowns, they do have the depth. Who can they play at left back, just for argument's sake? They can play Zika Semashaba, you know. So if you go back to the other positions as well, I think they're well equipped to, you know, to deal with that, you know. So for me, I'm not really concerned about that. I'm saying to Sundowns, focus on your game. Don't be frustrated by the Algerians. You know, I know they're going to play mind games, because the difference in these Champions League games or continental games is what do the others do, you know, in terms of unsettling you. And if you buy into that, you're going to have problems. I remember at one point they were using what you call those things, the lasers or whatever, you know, to distract the Pirates players.
Especially in North Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to do that. Now, if you look at the referee and you complain to the referee that, but why are you not stopping that? You're losing focus, basically.
Yeah.
So focus on the game, concentrate on the game, and then you can win the game. So for me, Sundowns, like I said and I repeat, you know, they do have the quality, without a doubt, in my opinion.
Now, before we close off our little chat, Gianni, I'm going to try and see if we've got a graphic that shows all the fixtures that Sundowns have got in this opening, in Group B, group stages. If it is up, I'm going to be asking our director to just bring it up for us, please, so we can actually talk while it's out there for our viewers to see. But in the meantime, they're playing some massive teams. I mean, if you have a look at that, it's like you said, it's ESAT first in Algeria. Then then they'll be playing Mamelodi Sundowns, and that's slightly incorrect. Those are not venues; those are teams. As well as Mamelodi Sundowns will be playing Zamalek, ESAT, and Yimba. These are massive teams. I think we can take this off. There's a challenge with this particular graphic. It gives us the basic information, but under wrong headings. What do you make? I mean, these are massive teams, and Sundowns is going to be hard put to get it past them to get out of the group stages.
Yeah, you see, what they have to do is to make sure when they play at home, they get the results. It's as simple as that. If you get the result, and I'm talking about maximum points, then it means you're sitting on 9 points. Now, what then makes a difference is what you get on the road. What you get on the road when you're out there, you know. So for me, if they can win all their home matches, they'll be home and dry. You know, I've seen these CAF matches, you know, the teams that go through, especially the teams from North Africa, the way they plan around it is that win your home matches. When you go away, you know, they obviously have that conservative approach, you know, where they make it difficult for you to score. In most cases, it ends in draws. Go back to the past winners. Yeah. That's how they do it. Even when Al Ahly came here to play part in the first leg of the final, they got a draw here. Yeah. And for them, you know, at home, they have the support, they have everything. You don't know, you know, what happens behind the scenes. It's massive, you know. It's a massive challenge, you know, when you go to play in their own backyard. So if they can win their home matches, I think they'll be home and dry.
Tian Wagamabasa, thank you so much. We do appreciate you just giving us these few minutes to actually get an understanding of how big the challenge that these guys have is. Senior sports writer from Times Media, thank you so much for coming through.
Pleasure, sir.
This is where we leave it with the sports. Tietzi Munari is standing by to give you the weather forecast.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. Yet another cool day is expected for most parts of South Africa, with partly cloudy skies just along the northeastern regions going up towards Mozambique. Otherwise, clear skies for much of the west and the interior. And that goes for tomorrow as well. So your weekend is basically going to be quite clear, except if you're in Cape Town, there might be a bit of rain just towards that west coast because of another cold front that's coming through. Temperature-wise, it's going to be a warm one for all those that are going to be in Windhoek. Temperatures there at 26 degrees. Some sunny skies from Pretoria through Gaborone all the way up north towards Lusaka in Zambia. Along the eastern coastline, partly cloudy skies, possibilities of rain also expected here from Pietermaritzburg into Durban, as well as over some parts of Richards Bay. And into the central parts from Central African Republic, do you expect partly cloudy skies going up towards the Afari regions of Ethiopia? Maybe even Kampala would also expect some rain, and temperatures are expected to be into the upper 20s from Kampala towards Juba. 29 is the maximum for Juba. Addis Ababa is cool as usual at 22 degrees. But I must tell you, if you are in Ethiopia, there are some places that can get really, really hot and really, really cold at the same time. Mogadishu is at 29 degrees, Mombasa 30, and Dar es Salaam at 31 degrees. So temperature variations in the desert regions can go to being very hot during the day and very cold at night. Bangui is at 33, Yaoundé at 26, and Libreville sitting at 28 degrees. Some partly cloudy skies towards Brazzaville as well as over Kinshasa. No chance of rainfall is expected for the Sahara Desert and much of the northern parts of Africa, right through Algeria into Tunisia as well as over Cairo in Egypt. Damascus, looks like it's going to be quite dry there. Sunny conditions for much of the day, and temperatures at 34 degrees. Baghdad is at 31. Cairo is at 38, including Benghazi, as well as over Tripoli. Sabah, very hot at 42 degrees. Agadir is sitting at 40. and do expect partly cloudy skies going in towards Conakry as well as over Abidjan. And if you're going to be in Eben's favorite town, Naimi, do you expect the temperatures to be at a maximum of around 30 or to 40 degrees, so very hot weather along those parts. Bamako is at 36, Conakry 28, and Abidjan also sitting into the upper 20s. That's where I'm going to leave it for the weather for now. Do stay tuned, there'll be more later.
Did you go to heaven? Kelvin is the one who created all this. What are you fighting over? Us? If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Hello again, you're still with us here on Newsroom on SABC News. Of course, just 11 a.m. Central African time. We're about to bring you another news update. But before we get there, of course, it's Father's Day weekend all around the world, really. I'm with Rene West, as always, and Kenda Makamate, who's a father 23 days ago, mind you. So we asked the question today, what do men want? What do men want ahead of Father's Day? It's something that I can't get my head around myself because I don't know. I'm confused about that. But, Rene, we've got a couple of tweets in, don't we? People are talking
We do.
about...
People are talking about this.
Talking about what do men want.
This one comes in from Lagasa and says, Happy Father's Day. As a man, I would say I want a happy family and brighter future for my family.
That's a wonderful tweet. I like that, Lagasa. Fantastic.
Very simple. This one coming in from Molepo and says, men want to be respected. 1994 has put women's rights in the spotlight to an extent that men feel marginalized.
Respect is always earned, isn't it? Well, it's now 11:01 Central African time. Time for us to get a news update with Rene West.
The son of the former SABC anchor and board member Hope Zinde is expected back in court for the murder of his mother. President Jacob Zuma urges young people to take advantage of the sacrifices made by the 1976 youth to make education their priority. And the Pan-Africanist Congress insists it will contest the local government elections despite its exclusion from the vote by the IEC. Let's take a look at what's coming up in your sports news with Kendall Makamate.
Thank you very much, Renee. It's actually the second time around that I'm being a father. 23 days old my son is. It's a great feeling. Great thing. Good morning. Coming up in sports today is this.
We're starting on a new slate this week. Therefore, I've given the same players, most of them, an opportunity to redeem themselves and make sure that they get it right. I believe in second chances.
Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee is set to give his players a chance to redeem themselves, making only 2 injury-forced changes to the starting 15.
Smart save. Northern Ireland get their second goal.
Northern Ireland eliminate Ukraine from the UEFA Euro 2016 Championship with a resounding 2-0 win.
Let the celebrations begin, because they have just given themselves the most amazing opportunity.
And it's D-Day today for Russian athletes as they wait to find out if the IAAF Council will lift the country's ban for organized doping. All this and more we've got for you in the sports a little later on. But for now, it's back to Renee West, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. The author of a new book on South Africa's political landscape believes the country's future is bright, despite concerns around the quality of political leadership. John Campbell served as a political counselor at the American Embassy in Pretoria in the early to mid-1990s, and later as the United States ambassador to Nigeria, and is currently the Ralph Bunche Senior Fellow for Africa Policy at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. Ambassador Campbell sat down with our very own Sherwin Bryce Peace to talk about his new book, Morning in South Africa, that covers the trajectory of the country, its relationship with the United States, and his critique of some of the figures who dominate the country's political discourse today.
Ambassador John Campbell, good to see you. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why did you feel it was necessary to write this book? Obviously, it was written for a foreign audience, but what was the objective?
Well, I was intrigued with how much or how little South Africa has changed since 1994. I was also concerned that Americans who had been very much focused on South Africa during the period of the transition, that for too many of us it had just sort of dropped off the radar. Instead of being the Rainbow Nation, a grand democratic experiment, the construction of a country based on democracy, human rights, and multiracial. Instead, too many Americans were looking at South Africa from the perspective of game parks. Now, game parks are fine, but it's of limited relevance to the greater world. Whereas I think South Africa is of great relevance to the great world, as it were, because, as I argue there, it is an experiment in non-racial democracy, but it's an experiment that's actually working.
But it begs the question then, why did it fall off the radar so far in terms of the American public?
I think there are a variety of answers to that. First of all, the attention span of my fellow countrymen with respect to the outside world is not exactly elephantine. It's more like a squirrel. So you start with that. Secondly, there are relatively few areas of security concern where our interests overlap. And then, ironically, South Africa's very success. There's no Darfur, there's no Ebola, there's no civil war. There is none of the kinds of events that generate American attention. HIV/AIDS, yes, but HIV/AIDS is a pandemic. It's not just in South Africa.
And Ronald Reagan and his veto in the 80s frayed the relationship and has in many ways defined the relationship that the ANC government has had with Washington to date, not so?
I would agree with that. I would agree that historical memory plays an extremely important role. I would say that the memory is distorted. It is forgotten that Ronald Reagan's veto was overturned by the Congress, one of the very, very few times that has ever happened. It's also forgotten that Ronald Reagan appointed the first African-American ambassador to South Africa. In other words, the evolution of the Reagan administration, and it did evolve, it did change, is I think, too often overlooked in South Africa.
And yet the relationship, as much as they have these strategic dialogues, it's nothing more than cordial. These are not great friends anymore. Is that surprising to Americans?
Well, or at least, I don't know about to Americans, it's disappointing to me, because it does seem to me that two democratic, multiracial countries have a great deal in common. Certainly, there is a great deal that we Americans could learn from the South African experience. And to me, it is disappointing the relationship is not very much closer. In 1994, there was a kind of American expectation that the relationship would indeed be very close, that possibly something like the bilateral relationship with Australia or New Zealand, a relationship where there would be almost constant consultation. Those expectations were disappointed fairly early on. I think the Mandela administration was disappointed at the relatively low levels of American economic investment in South Africa, perhaps overlooking the fact that American investment decisions are made by private corporations and largely without reference to the federal government. For the Americans, there was disappointment that the Mandela administration pursued its close relationship with Gaddafi, and subsequently that Mbeki seemed to look the other way with respect to the gross human rights violations in Zimbabwe. So on both sides, I think there was some disappointment.
Let's talk a bit more about specifics in the book and your broad analysis of the political landscape in South Africa today. I mean, you write about the style of the government that has become more African and less Western since the days of Nelson Mandela.
Style.
Is that supposed to be a bad thing?
No,
I mean, why make that comparison?
No, by no means is it a bad thing. And in fact, in the book, I point out that, in fact, in the 21 or 22 years since the transition, the majority of the population of South Africa is now at home in their own country in a way they were not before 1994. And the style of governance, including things like wholesale renaming of places, I think contributes to that.
You also write, Ambassador, about what you call a dysfunctional leadership at the top, and that in your analysis, perhaps, it's made less so by a strong independent judicial system, a strong vocal civil society, a largely market-driven economy that leads you to a generally positive assessment of this country. Speak to that.
That's correct. All democracies can have patches of bad governance. Think in terms of our own history of Richard Nixon, or it could happen in the future, where the American political system may face an episode of poor governance.
Can't imagine what you're talking about.
I'm sure you can't. In the American case, and in the South African case now, the institutions, Constitution, internalizing the rule of law, those Chapter 9 institutions which protect South Africans. I would even say even more basic is the fact that South Africa is a constitutional democracy. It is not a parliamentary democracy. Correct. That means there are limits imposed by the law on what any government can do at any level. This means that as an entity, South Africa is pretty tough. And in that sense, I think there are distinct similarities to the United States and to other advanced democracies around the world.
Well, having said that, you still raise concerns about corruption and cronyism. And you raised the concerns about the big style of government built around a strongman personality, a la Zimbabwe, a la Uganda.
South Africans worry about that too.
What do you make about the prospects for that happening in South Africa?
I don't think, first of all, obviously anything can happen. It's impossible to predict the future. I think it is highly unlikely. I think the institutions are so strong that big man governance is not really an option. And in fact, we've had some pretty clear proof of that in recent court decisions and in the performance of the public protector.
And yet political leadership, you write about, is important. You know, you write about the darkest cloud in South Africa's morning sky is the quality of the political leadership at the top, and that's not going to make you many friends in the ANC.
Probably not. What's the problem here? The problem is, if there is an administration that is widely perceived as corrupt, infected by cronyism, it becomes very difficult for that administration to actually address the real issues that the country faces. It becomes
hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy, but it also consumes energy. So that the kind of political infighting that we are seeing now means there is less attention, there's less energy that can be devoted to issues like meaningful educational reform. I tend to think that that education is central to bringing down the unemployment rate, which is central to reducing levels of poverty. But that's not what the upper reaches of the ANC seem to be concerned about now. It's much more retail politics, if you like.
And then you have the economic freedom fighters, you have the Democratic Alliance. What's your sense when we are going into an election in August, municipal elections, local government elections? I'm sure you've seen the scenes in Parliament. What do you make about this Malema-led EFF and the Maimane-led Democratic Alliance?
Well, here's my problem with the EFF. It's not its ideas. The EFF is the closest thing South Africa has to a left-wing political party, and it's not very left-wing. What I think is distressing about the EFF is its willingness to resort to anti-parliamentary tactics, demonstrations on the floor of the House, preventing people from speaking. This does not promote a democratic culture.
What does it promote?
It promotes, I'm afraid, a kind of contempt for political institutions in general. Democratic Alliance, very interesting. Its leadership is impressive. The question, I think, will be whether it can break out of the particular electoral ghetto that it's in. I mean, its electoral support is overwhelmingly white, colored, and Asian. 80% of South Africa's population is black. If it is ever going to be a party of governance, it has to make itself relevant to the majority of the population. It will be interesting to watch the local government elections coming up to see whether, in fact, it is able to attract significant numbers of black voters.
We haven't spoken very glowingly about the ANC's leadership, but is there impressive leadership within the ANC?
Yes. I think one of the interesting things about the ANC is it's a very, very broad tent. One way to think about it is there's an important part of the ANC that is genuinely democratic and genuinely espouses non-racial ideals. It's right there. It's alive and kicking. Then there is the sort of personalities in the ANC who have, in my view, a lot of other people too, have lost sight of the ANC's ideals and are too concerned about exercising power for its own sake and also their own economic advancement. ANC's big. It's big and it's variable. It is not monolithic, and I think it certainly has within itself the seeds of reform.
Final question. You do explain it in the book, but could you explain for our viewers, Mourning in South Africa, the title of this book?
The title of the book deliberately echoes Ronald Reagan's campaign for his second term. his campaign slogan was, "It's morning in America." Only, of course, if you were an anti-apartheid activist, if you were trying to address America's civil rights issues, if you were concerned about gross inequality of income, it wasn't morning in America. But Reagan caught something, and that is, after one difficult event after another, all during the 1970s, by his second term, things were looking up. Americans were becoming optimistic. In general, I think there's something of that in South Africa now. Again, it's very striking how you can almost watch the mood in South Africa changing in the aftermath of the public protector, the court decisions, the apparent resolution of Nkandla and other such. So it's morning. It's not dawn. I mean, it's...
So the sun's going up?
Yeah, sun's going up. Exactly. Just as it is here.
John Campbell, Ambassador, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.
From the moment you start your day.
My biggest question is how I got myself here on time.
Yeah.
It's so early for a comedian, I gotta be honest.
We are there for you. We bring your morning into perspective.
As news breaks throughout the morning.
Is an investment into the future of the airports company, but also the future of our children, the future of our country, the future of the transport sector.
We'll make sure that you get the full story.
Give us quality music. Load shedding. Listen, this winter.
It's a thing of the past. And you can count on the weather team with expertise.
Join us live at 6 a.m. daily.
Hello again. Time for us to take a more regional look at the news here on Newsroom. Now, two community leaders from Vuwani in Limpopo, they are due to appear in the Thohoyandou Magistrates Court there this morning. They're facing charges of incitement and malicious damage to property. Now, more than 20 schools have been torched and vandalized by protesters who do not want their area to be incorporated into a new municipality. But today, the SABC Foundation brought many smiles to the community there that's been engaged in this bitter demarcation dispute. The Minister of Communications, Faith Mutambi, together with SABC Board Chairperson, as well as the COO and the CFO, officially handed over a library to the community of Manini, just outside Thohoyandou in the province of Limpopo. Now, our very own reporter, Mike Maringa, talked to the Minister of Communication, Faith Mutambi, earlier.
I think it's an exciting moment for the community of Manin, in particular Hachikova. This is a historically disadvantaged community. You can look at the school facilities. Much more needs still to be done. But what's so exciting as part of the SABC corporate social responsibility, hence the SABC Foundation is coming to the picture. These kids here, like any other historically disadvantaged children, they will for the first time have access to a library. And then, like they indicated there, the chief was already committed to give this community a site wherein this library will fully be established. But then, ours as government, we really appreciate this effort that the SABC has done, in the sense that having access to a library to some of the children around this area, in particular in Vembe, is still a privilege. It's a luxury. So to me, that's a very exciting moment in the sense that we'll need to learn from one guy from Malawi, Mr. William Kamkwamba. He went to a library and borrowed a book that was talking about libraries. At the end of the day, he built an energy turbine, what do you call it, an energy turbine that at the end of the day, it had to generate energy for the village in the community. So this is a sense of the power of reading. You can see that based on that, it enlarged the community, they became literate, and then they can make decisions based on that, because it's another way of providing access to information to the communities.
In my interaction with the community, they indicated that 350 learners are going to benefit from this project, but also that there are other communities just near this area who do not have a library. Is there any sort of intervention that we can see in the near future?
You know, together with the Ministry of Arts and Culture, the Deputy Minister Mabutafasi is passionate about that. Whenever we're moving along communities, they've got a program wherein they say one library per community. I think together in partnership, because what we are doing is to contribute to outcome 14 as the SABC. Remember, this is the overall responsibility for the Department of Arts and Culture, but you know that in these communities there's a need of libraries all over. So to working together, then I'm calling on private sector to come to the party. Like here in our midst, we've got one Mr. Tinas Pretorius, is a disabled person who also donated computer to this library. So it's about a collective effort between ourselves, government and private sector, to make sure that we empower our communities. I must say up front, most of the schools here in this area, they don't have libraries. They see it as a luxury. So there's a lot of work that's still to be done. But I must say that we are doing this during the June month to empower our young kids to get away from the streets, so that they get engaged. They must be reading books. By reading books, they get empowered such that they can make decisions, develop their country as well.
Minister, before I let you go, let's talk about books. They've also indicated that the library is here, but they don't have enough books. How are you going to assist in that regard?
Yes, like I've indicated, together with the Ministry of Arts and Culture, we are going to work together to get donors. Hence, using this platform, I'm calling upon all prospective donors, the businesses in particular within the area, to say, if you invest in books, you are investing to the nation, then you'll keep your kids away from the streets. Also, the beauty about this thing, even adults, because we are trying to instill the culture of reading and learning, and it's only done that through when we've got enough books where everybody can have access to. So this is a very good initiative, because it's going to also create the reading culture in this community. Not about the school kids alone, it includes also adults. So it's a bonus for this community in the sense that together with businesses, I know we're going to move forward to make sure that we buy more books for this library. And I know the communities here, we've got a lot of learned colleagues. They will also, some of them, even a donation of a book. Whichever book you feel you're having it in your home that you're not utilizing, I urge community members to come and donate books to this library.
Brought to you by the SABC, we have to add. Wonderful initiative. Of course, it's Father's Day weekend. Yeah, we celebrate Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to everybody. But we need to read to our children, to inculcate that culture of reading. It's our responsibility as men to make time to read with our children. Let's think about that over this Father's Day weekend. Now, a group of young filmmakers born in a post-democratic South Africa in 1994 has paid tribute to the class of 1976 as the country marks 40 years since the Soweto student uprising. Students at the Johannesburg Film and Television School, AFDA, have reflected on the legacy of the generation of Hector Peterson and Tsietse Mashinini.
AFDA, a leading film and television school founded in 1994 at the dawn of the new dispensation. AFDA has been churning out award-winning filmmakers. This is Maliswan Ntwane. She is one of a group of up-and-coming filmmakers who were all born in 1994. And their latest project, a documentary called Who Did I Raise? It interrogates the burning issue of parental abuse.
But we want people to know that these things do happen, and we want parents who go through the situation to know that it's okay to talk about it, because talking does bring healing, you know.
Who Did I Raise comes at a time South Africa grapples with family murders. Just this week, 2 young men were arrested after being accused of killing their parents in the Northwest and Stellenbosch, respectively.
We did a lot of research. We realized that it was a very subtle issue, people didn't speak about it. And I think our documentary came at the right time, you know, because now people are starting to talk about it.
Drug abuse was one of the main problems within our documentary, and the causes of drug abuse were also mentioned, and we can clearly state the disconnect between a parent and a child is just that we don't spend enough time with each other.
Well, she's a Xhosa mother, I'm also Xhosa, and when she was speaking in Xhosa, it felt like I could relate with her so much, because she's like, yo, mama, I'm so sorry. You know, I felt that sorry in my heart, you know, as she was speaking. But I had to keep professional, and I had to keep shooting her. You know, I'm shooting her tears, but it's also hitting me hard. So yeah.
In my short period of being involved in this industry, I've realized that issues such as this type of abuse are not reported as much. We always want to talk about what America is talking about. We always want to talk about what other continents are talking about. However, we never stick to home.
And as we mark Youth Day and Youth Month, these born frees say the class of 1976 laid the foundation for them.
It's a very concrete foundation that we can now develop and make it better and work on it and bring our juice to the 1976 generation. They've laid a very good foundation for us.
We should not succumb to stereotypes and live up to what people expect of us. We should actually try to push ourselves and do more and believe in ourselves more in order for us to create something big and leave a legacy behind.
It's very important for us to understand that we are the future of this country, and we need to hold the ball as if we are the next kings, you know. And yeah, it had a big impact on South Africa, the 1976 thing, and it's still an ongoing effect that's happening now.
They are hoping their documentary will spark national dialogue that will help put an end to the abuse of parents by their children.
Raise addresses critical issues that are happening in our society. The documentary will be shown on Saturday here at AFDA. Njanjita Uke, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the Congress of South African Students, COSAS as it's known, is hosting their first annual Amantombazana Convention at Kimberley in the Northern Cape Province. Now, ANC Women's League President Batabile Dlamini, she will deliver the keynote address there, as I understand. The convention is expected to deal specifically with gender-related issues. Issues of teenage pregnancy, sugar daddies, and sexual exploitation of female learners by their male teachers will come squarely under the spotlight. Now, the COSAS Northern Cape Deputy Secretary, Koketso Molale, she joins us from our studios in Kimberley this morning. Very good morning to you, Koketso. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. A very good morning to you too.
Very good morning to you. Just tell us, Amantombazana, tell us about the convention and what you're hoping to achieve.
All right, thank you. Just clarity, my name is Stella Mondlane, the National Working Committee member of Congress of South African Students. Koketso could not join us due to logistical issues she's attending to. Amantombazane Convention is a concept that initially was developed by Gauteng and it was hosted provincially, but we saw it fit due to the huge positive response we were getting to have a national Amantombazane Convention. So this is the first of its kind that we are hosting in Northern Cape here in Kimberley. The convention looks at empowering and emancipating young female. We are hoping to groom young females to be leaders, to see themselves as prominent figures in the society.
Now, the issues under discussion, very much in the news. One of the most concerning things right now for young women especially is the idea of blessers or sugar daddies that's in the news right now. Are you guys dealing directly with this issue with the learners?
That is very true what you are saying. In actual fact, it has went to an extent of being termed in a fashionable way. They're no longer saying sugar daddies, they're calling them blessers. Now, as Congress of South African Students, we strongly feel against what is happening. We are saying that when you're a child, when you're a learner, you're supposed to be focusing on your studies. You're supposed to be focusing on securing your future. And we are saying to these self-proclaimed blessers that continue doing what you are doing and causes will come after you. We recently launched a program that says we are going to Shambok Nyaupes. At this point, we feel that it's necessary that we have the very same kind of a program directed to these blessers.
To Shambok them?
Yes.
That's certainly very firm indeed. What about teachers that have relationship with school children? That's the other one that's that you guys are looking at, isn't it?
Yes, that is very true. You see, when a person is still in school, it is understood that the person is under the age of 18. And when you are under the age of 18 and you are having a relationship with your teacher, that is a criminal offense according to the South African law. You are actually abusing a minor. So we are making a call actually to the government. We are making a call to the South African police to assist us in this, because we cannot do it alone. We continue to say it's still a crime, and we are encouraging our constituency to report to us once such things are happening. We are very, if I should say, popular for kicking out teachers who do not abide by the code of conduct of the school, because each and every school says that no teacher should have a relationship with a school child.
Yeah, that goes without saying. Now, it's Father's Day weekend this weekend, and of course, today we're dealing with issues of absentee fathers and so forth. How do we make sure that our young men in the schools, the boy child, that we focus on the boy child a little bit in school so that they can maybe understand the principles of being around for your children?
All right. A question was posed to us during our campaign of Amantombazane Convention as to what about a male child in the society, because as much as females make certain decisions, they are also influenced by males. Now, we are saying that we believe that when you build self-esteem of a girl child, you are helping them to respond in a positive manner to males in the society who might come with negative ideas. Now, we are not limiting the event to only females. Even males are more than welcome to attend this Amantombazane Convention, but our main audience is females. We will be addressing issues such as LGBT inclusion in the society, and by LGBT you might be having your male who is transversing to be a female.
Very, very interesting. And tell me, when do you expect the ANC Women's League President Badabile Dlamini to deliver the keynote address at your convention?
She is expected to address at 1 o'clock. We are also expecting the Premier of Northern Cape to address at 2 o'clock.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Coming to us live from Kimberley, we're talking about the Amantombazane Northern Cape Convention campaign, helping the girl child. We're talking about the boy child today. We're going to take a short break. Kendall Mahamate, who's got a boy child, 23 days old, will be back with us after a short little break.
A lot more Africans are getting smartphones.
We've got 150 million people using mobile devices in this country.
This means internet connectivity is increasing. That results in access to information. Some are using social media to share new African narratives through campaigns.
The friend says, oh, I'm seeing this thing on Facebook. Where is it happening? At Yege Stadium, everybody goes there.
On Network, we tell you how Africans are staying connected. We also have new gadgets, games and social media news. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 19:30 Central African Time.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Time just hit just before 20 to 12. Now, the Springboks' battle for redemption moves to Ellis Park this weekend. After a bruising week in the press where the men in green and gold were lambasted for being passionless and naive. The new era that was ushered in when Alistair Coetzee took charge of his very first test as head coach was loaded with expectation that they would win. Now, the Boks had never lost to Ireland at home and, of course, had never lost a series to them either. The pressure is not really on. With me is Skolele Sochelelwa to chat a little bit about this, as well as our other national team that's playing over the weekend, the Proteas. Good morning. Thanks very much for coming through.
Yeah, morning, Kendall. Hopefully it will be a different weekend, looking at it.
Now, we are saying that we believe that when you build self-esteem of a girl child, you are helping them to respond in a positive manner to males in the society who might come with negative ideas. Now, we are not limiting the event to only females. Even males are more than welcome to attend this Amantombazane convention, but our main audience is females. We will be addressing issues such as LGBT inclusion in the society, and by LGDP you might be having your male who is transversing to be a female.
Very, very interesting. And tell me, when do you expect the ANC Women's League President Badabile Dlamini to deliver the keynote address at your convention?
She is expected to address at 1 o'clock. We are also expecting the Premier of Northern Cape to address at 2 o'clock.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Coming to us live from Kimberley, we're talking about the Amantombazane Northern Cape Convention campaign, helping the girl child. We're talking about the boy child today. We're going to take a short break. Kendall Makhamate, who's got a boy child, 23 days old, will be back with us after a short little break.
A lot more Africans are getting smartphones.
You've got 150 million people using mobile devices in this country.
This means internet connectivity is increasing. That results in access to information. Some are using social media to share new African narratives through campaigns.
The friend says, oh, I'm seeing this thing on Facebook. Where is it happening? Now, Yege Stadium, everybody goes there.
On Network, we tell you how Africans are staying connected. We also have new gadgets, games and social media news. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 19:30 Central African Time.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Time just hit just before 20 to 12. Now, the Springboks' battle for redemption moves to Ellis Park this weekend. After a bruising week in the press where the men in green and gold were lambasted for being passionless and naive. The new era that was ushered in when Alistair Coetzee took charge of his very first test as head coach was loaded with expectation that they would win. Now, the Boks had never lost to Ireland at home and, of course, had never lost a series to them either. The pressure is not really on. With me is Skolele Sochelelwa to chat a little bit about this, as well as our other national team that's playing over the weekend, the Proteas. Good morning. Thanks very much for coming through.
Yeah, morning, Kendall. Hopefully it will be a different weekend, looking at it on Monday. But you're quite right. The squad that the Springboks had last weekend, they shouldn't have lost to Ireland, even though Ireland had five tests already played in 2016. But the Springboks, what they had on paper, what they had running onto the field at Newlands last weekend, they shouldn't have lost to Ireland. But credit to Ireland, they brought their game to the Springboks' physicality, and South Africa is now catching up or waking up to the realization that physically most teams are matching up to them. The driving maul is not what it used to be, and teams are now keeping ball in hand, and it's proving to be difficult for the Springboks.
So does Alistair Coetzee try and get a win at all costs tomorrow, or does he try and start ushering in a new brand of rugby, or whatever it is he's got in his mind as to how the Springboks will be playing going forward to 2019?
Well, what I picked up from the press conference is that he's definitely looking for a win. He's under a bit of pressure because he will not want to lose a home series to Ireland. Obviously based on the selections that he's kept, even though one or two players weren't so impressive in that first test. But the inclusion of Mone Steyn shows a bit of, he wants to go the safe route, because there's Garth April, who was included in his original squad, and he's not in the squad to play at Ellis Park tomorrow, or in the 30 that was supposed to train this week. So, yeah, it's safety first at the moment, and the back three will have to step up again, which is something that is strange to me, because the back three of Mvovo, JP Peterson and Willie Leroux is a back three that plays together and has been playing together with the Sharks, and what we saw on Saturday, running out of space, Willie Leroux continuing running towards the line and not straightening. Some decisions that he took on the day, Frans Maghreb as well, but the swapping of Peter Steph du Toit and Lut Diaga, I think it's a bit premature. We know Lut Diaga that when he puts on that jumper, he becomes a different
Is it not injury-based, or is that what we're being told?
What we're being told is injury, but again, in that back line, happy to see Elton Jantjies getting a start at Ellis Park together with Faf de Klerk. Hopefully, Rowan Combrink also gets a run, because he's been included in that squad, and in my opinion, should have been starting from last weekend right at the wing.
Daniel Mapo is still in there as well, and Warren Whiteley, should he not have been? Should he be getting an opportunity this time?
Kendall, it's exciting to see players in form. It's exciting to see players putting up their hands, but we've seen in recent times that the bench proves to be the difference, and we need to build a bench, because we know what Rugby Championship has, 2 or 3 months down the line, particularly against a team like the All Blacks, who may look like they shattered until the 60th minute, and that's when you need some players like Warren Whiteley to come in and make a difference.
Now, when we parted ways on the weekend before this last test with Georgie, yourself, and also having a chat with Eben offline, we'd been looking at, we'd been placing bets on how the Springboks were going to win by 10, by 6, by 8, and nobody got the money because we ended up losing. What do you think is happening tomorrow?
All of us were horrible. I still say South Africa will bounce back. Most of the players who would have been excited leading up to that first test match, the press, the training, everything leading up to that first test would have been forgotten about, and Alistair Coetzee and the management would have calmed them down, the nerves and everything. And some players who were in that squad, like Lionel Mapua, will be chuffed to be playing at Ellis Park in front of their home crowd.
Let's move to the Proteas now. Imran Tahir did the unthinkable. 7 for 45. Fantastic returns on our frontline spinner. Beautiful stuff against the West Indies. But then previously they'd lost dismally against Australia, who'd been beaten decisively by the same West Indies. Hashim Amla got himself a ton, 111. We had fantastic performances by de Kock, by Faf. What happens tomorrow? We're playing a tri-series. There have been lots of ups and downs across all three teams. What do you think is going to happen?
Kendall, we speak of Quinton de Kock and we speak of Hashim Amla, his ton. But for me, the standout performance on the day was Quinton de Kock. The ability for him to stand at the other end and be as quiet as he was on the day, something which is unusual to him, because he's the one who's always giving the Proteas a good start, a quick fire start. But he's showing signs of maturity now, and he needs to take that responsibility that some days it's not going to come off the bat, and I must be happy to sit at the other end and rotate the strike, which is another aspect of his game that I would like to see change. His ability to rotate the strike and to find the singles, because Hashim Amla on the day was just superb.
And what about Imi?
Oh, Imran Tahir, I've never seen him run like that.
I don't think that's the right graphic to show when we're talking ODIs. One would hope that we talk white ball cricket.
You know, on the day, Imran Tahir is the sort of player who feeds off the situation that is at hand. If he knows he's got 300, 350 runs to play with, then we'll start seeing, the Imran Tahir who will get a wicket and start jetting off. But when the scores are 180, 160, he gets, a bit of pressure because he knows the score is a bit low and he can be expensive at times. But we need to touch on also Kagiso Rabada, who's not in form. I'd like to see Moane Morkel being included into that squad on Sunday because the Aussies will come out. They will come out because they know now, all three teams know now that if you lose, you're out.
Well, thank you so much for coming through. I know it's going to be a massive weekend. You're not a father yet, but I know I'm going to be celebrating all sorts of ties, and I'll probably be wearing one of my special ties on Monday morning, and maybe we'll see you then and have a chat about the weekend.
I'll definitely be here on Monday because we're going to win tomorrow and we're going to win on Sunday.
Very good. There you have it. Predictions from Skolele Sochilelo about the weekend. Now, moving on to other sporting stories. Russia will find out today if the IAAF Council will lift the country's ban from athletics. But even if the vote goes against it, the road to Rio remains open, as the IOC will make the final decision on Olympic participation. Now, Russia, as you remember, was suspended from all track and field in November after an independent report from the World Anti-Doping Agency revealed widespread state-sponsored doping. After a task force reported back that the country appeared to have made little progress on reforms, the International Association of Athletics Federations Council voted in March to maintain the ban. A further meeting was subsequently arranged for Vienna today, with the IAAF Council scheduled to vote on whether to lift it. And Durban is in for a treat this weekend. Wales, ranked 8th in the world netball, will meet the 5th-ranked South African Proteas in the upcoming Spa Challenge over 3 test games this weekend. That's from today until Sunday at the Durban International Convention Centre. South African coach Norma Plummer says playing teams that are above them or in the same space as them will definitely improve the team.
It's about having the Proteas out on the international arena, but playing teams that are, well suited above them or on a same sort of similar par. If you're going to improve, you need the competition and you need to know what's happening in the international arena because the game's changing that quickly. Well, as I say, you don't ever ignore the opposition. You always have respect for them and make sure that you do your homework. We watched the game from last year's World Cup and they've had some changes. Now, to what depth that is, I'm not sure. There's a lot of their younger talents come into the team and you always got to be mindful that youth is exuberant and they could put out any type of game against you. So we've got to be prepared and I think we are well prepared.
The professionalism has really been stepped up a notch. We've really enjoyed being seen as professional athletes these last couple of months. Norma has changed quite a few things. I think Wales is a formidable team. I think they will definitely have also improved since we played them last at World Cup. Definitely won't be underestimating them.
Formula One is preparing to have its inaugural race in Baku, Azerbaijan at the weekend, the quickest street circuit on the racing calendar. But some drivers have expressed concern that some sections of the circuit are a little too tight. The circuit has the sport's longest straight, a 2.1-kilometre blast where cars reach around 340 kilometres per hour and tight corners around medieval walls. Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel says he's looking ahead to an unpredictable weekend. McLaren's Fernando Alonso also echoed Vettel's enthusiasm, but not all drivers are entirely comfortable with the circuit. Formula One Championship leader Nico Rosberg and McLaren's Jenson Button have expressed concern about the pit lane entry and lack of runoff areas at the new Baku street circuit. As you can see, currently coming to you live, practice 1, 42 minutes into that session. Hamilton on 1 minute 46.489 and Rosberg second, Bottas, Perez, Alonso bring up the top 5. Vettel is sitting in 9th. Let's take the radio from Rosberg to see what he's saying.
Something's loose, not quite right for Nico Rosberg. Maybe something's been left there, which we have heard of in the past.
Lewis has probably thrown something in there, hasn't he?
That's right. Yeah, okay. Well, quite a few cars out there. Cars bottoming out on the straights as well. But right now, Lewis Hamilton has gone back fastest. We saw Bottas.
That promises to be a very interesting one. First time that they're racing out in Baku. Now, only one of 7 South Africans playing in the US Open golf tournament at the Oakmont Country Club in Pennsylvania have started their rounds. Bad weather saw repeat delays at last yesterday, and only finished players have actually finished 18 holes. Now, Thomas Aiken struggled to 7 over par through 15 holes, while the rest of the South Africans are are scheduled to tee off mid-afternoon, weather permitting.
Even though it had been softened by rain, Oakmont is a very tough layout. American Andrew Landry, playing his first ever US Open, used some accurate driving to take control, at one stage reaching 5 under par. But then he dropped 2 shots, although he was lining up a birdie putt at the 18th, when the horn sounded for the third and last time. He'll try to drop that when play resumes at 1:30 South African time this afternoon. The clubhouse lead is held by American amateur Scotty Scheffler. The 19-year-old was one of only 9 players to actually complete 18 holes, carding a 1 under par 69. But these relative unknowns are going to have to hold their nerves if they look at the names that surround them on the leaderboard. Double Masters champion Bubba Watson is on 2 under after 14, along with New Zealander Danny Lee, who's played 13. But the favourites have some work to do. Defending champion Jordan Spieth is at 1 over after 11, but that's better than the 2011 champion. Irishman Rory McIlroy struggled to 4 over par after 13, tied for 38th at the moment, and tied with Masters champion Danny Willett. Janet Witten, SABC News.
And that's where we're going to leave it with the show for the week and for the weekend. I'll be back on Monday with the entire team. Enjoy it. Have a great Father's Day. Until then, bye-bye.
News Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing lines.